Good morning, everyone. At this time, I'd like to call the Audit and Control Committee to order, January 16th. We have 4 members present, so it constitutes a quorum. At this time, I'd like to welcome everybody for the first meeting of the year. We do have a new member on the committee, so I'd like to welcome Mr. Nelson to the committee. We look forward to having you serve with us here.
Thank you. Yeah, it's good to be here.
Thank you. First order of business is approval of the minutes from the last couple of meetings. If I could.
So moved.
And a second.
Second.
All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Carried. Next is the privilege of the floor. Is there anyone here to address the committee this morning? If so, just please come down in front and. Blake, you want to come down? Good. I think we're all set. We'll move on to our proposed resolutions. Our first resolution today is authorized lease of office space between the Chautauqua County Office for Aging Service and the City of Dunkirk.
These chairs. Good morning, everybody. Dana Corwin, Interim Director at the Chautauqua County Office for Aging Services.
Diana Songer, Deputy Director of Finance for Human Services.
What do we have in front of us this morning, ladies?
We have in front of you a resolution to authorize a lease with the space we currently occupy with the City of Dunkirk at the Senior Center. We have a short-term lease that we're looking at until we are ready to make the move to the new location that had a resolution in 2024. So we just need some more time at the location, and this resolution will allow us to do this.
So it's my understanding you're just looking to resume in that space for another 4 to 6 months, depending on how the construction and build-out goes. So this is just a kind of a monthly rate that you can exit within, if you need to, in 60 days.
Absolutely.
Okay. Questions, comments from anyone? Mr. Scudder.
Just from the other day's meeting, this rent is $850 a month, and it was $875 a quarter.
That's correct.
Why the big increase?
The 875 expired some time ago, and the City of Dunkirk reached out to us with a new contract proposal. And it's a short-term lease. We shouldn't be there for very long, but it is an increase.
Yeah, it's an increase of a lot.
It
I mean,
is.
it's a noticeable increase. I'm not being
Absolutely.
critical. I'm just
Not a bit.
trying to make sense of it. 'Cause
Percentage-wise, it's huge, though.
Right. It is. But there's not been a current contract in place for a while.
How long's a while?
I believe 20.
It's a couple years.
21, from what I'm looking at.
All right.
So
4%.
I think it's a fair proposal.
Well, I don't know all the details, but to go from 3,000 to 10,000 a year is a big jump.
It is.
Just saying. But it's only going to last a year.
Less than a year, we're hopeful.
Less than a year,
Yeah,
okay.
Monday of this coming week, I should have the numbers on the renovations that are required on the new place. They required demolition of a cinder block bathrooms to create an ADA compliant bathroom, and some just renovations on the current property. So we're hopeful to be in there in just a couple months.
So sooner we're out, we're out.
Yes,
Okay.
sir.
Okay.
And this really is a good faith agreement.
It is.
In a sense, we could do nothing
We
and
could.
can just pay them what we've been paying them and move out in 4 to 6 months. We've probably been.
Yeah, we
We could, and that's why I say it's a good faith one, because it's, realistically, in comparison to other contracts, what you've negotiated monthly is probably what the market is right now, so.
It is for the space.
Okay.
Unfortunately, I agree.
I'm
We
going to
could do
advertise
nothing.
for my rentals. I want good faith tenants.
Understood. And I could agree, you know, one option is to do nothing and just say no to this and let it go as it is. Are they gonna evict you if you don't?
I
Take 'em
hadn't
2
heard
months
any
to
of
do
that.
it. Take them 2 months to do it.
Well, just a little more broadly, I mean, we have the city of Dunkirk coming to us, asking for help on this, that, and the other thing. Just perhaps a word that, you know, if you want us to play ball with you, do you really want to play ball with us this way?
I'm more making an observation than,
No, but
Understood.
it's an excellent observation.
Yeah.
I voted for it, and I will vote for it again.
Any other questions or comments?
No, this came up in public facilities too, and I thought the same thing, and I was trying to do the math in my head, and I thought, wow, this is quite an increase. But I'm hoping it's just maybe another month or 2 months.
I would say within the 6-month
Within
period is
6
what I'm
months.
hoping, because of the interior construction work that's needed in the new facility.
Tell them to hurry up.
Yeah.
Any other comments, questions? If not, all those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? Carried. Thank you.
Thank you.
Next proposed resolution, number 2, is authorized commercial 5-year lease agreement for a portion of parking lot at the Chautauqua County Jamestown Airport.
Good morning, Shannon Fisher, Manager of Airports. So you've heard about this one for the last couple of months because we have put the public hearing in, but as you know, the DMV, New York State DMV rents a portion of our parking lot to do CDL training, and we'd like to extend this lease for a 5-year period. As mentioned in public facilities and in the previous month, that the tenants are aware that, you know, if the return of air service, that we have to reassess the lease. So hopefully we could work together, but it's still something that we try to let everybody know. And I think the only thing we did change to was that we would increase 2% each year. So that's what we do for our tenants, such as the FBO and our maintenance mechanics.
What would you say the actual use is?
5 days a week.
They're up there
Yeah,
every day?
every day.
5 days a week?
Yep. And they do training from all over. I mean, it's everywhere.
Mhm.
Buses, semis, everything.
Does it impede at all operations?
Not right now, because it's on the far side of the parking area. But if we did have a full parking lot, then obviously we would want to make sure that area was clear. But they have it marked off to where their semi goes, and then there's usually just one truck from the reviewer who parks next to it, and then he just comes into the terminal and waits, but he has to be in the summertime, they wait outside because they have to see them, I guess. But, yeah, it works out nice. I mean, they get what they need. We kind of get extra revenue, and
We meet up there for the parks,
Mhm.
and you wouldn't even know it exists.
there.
I mean, there's little signs somewhere.
yeah, and
but
they're just far, like, totally across the
It's
parking
not a
lot.
factor.
Yep. Any questions, comments?
I don't know if it matters in this one, but we did have, I think this one was the typo, right?
It's a
Olivia?
typo, yeah.
Yeah, so you guys have we left out the resolved that the county executive is authorized and empowered to execute a lease agreement with, so that was
I think
revised.
it's the new one.
Last resolve.
It might have only
Yeah.
mattered in
Yeah,
public
our-
facilities. I
Our
don't
new
know if
ones,
it matters.
yeah, the new ones,
Okay.
yeah, the new ones are correct.
Sounds good.
Any other questions or comments? Not hearing any. All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Carried. Proposed resolution number 3 is authorized lease agreement at the Chautauqua County Jamestown Airport Terminal Building with Penn Border Aviation LLC.
So this one is, there's 2 people who are part of Penn Border Aviation. They came to us like the week of Christmas, I think, and asked if they could get a small office space, knowing we had it available behind the ticket counter at the terminal. And we based the lease rate off of the current Chase Aviation is the only office that's back there. So we just divided the square footage and gave it to them based on that. They'd like to do light maintenance. They're kind of a different type. They're like a traveling maintenance company. So if you took your aircraft to Dunkirk, they would go to you with a trailer. So it's kind of a different operation than what we're used to seeing, but they just needed office space, and we thought we'd do a trial for 6 months. If it doesn't work, it doesn't work. If it does, that's 6 months of a little bit more revenue that we didn't have, so,
Small question.
yes.
I'm no lawyer, but I've never heard of an office space with somebody at lease. You usually lease to somebody. Is there any
what do you mean?
significance to the choice of the word with?
Oh, I don't know. It was reviewed by legal. So Steve Abdullah gave us the, some of the edits for this.
I mean, it implies we're on the hook to ourselves, which I don't think we
Empowered to
need.
execute an agreement to lease office space with Penn Border Aviation. I see what you're saying, two.
It's usually the way it's phrased.
What did we put in the other ones, I guess? We did put two and with in the next one, so I don't know if it matters or not, but maybe we could propose to change it to two.
I think it's small enough and clear enough, but it's just,
The choice
I
of word.
really asked the question the other way
Yeah.
around in terms of, did somebody actually mean something with that? I don't think so.
No, we did not. That would just be, especially seeing the next one where we wrote it both ways, so.
Well, if you look at it, I mean, we're entering a lease with them,
Yeah,
you know, that's what we're doing.
but it's, I see what he's saying. It says to execute an agreement to lease office space with Penn Border instead of to Penn Border. But no, it's,
Innocent enough.
it is, but for the next one, if there's another one after the 6 months, we'll make sure we make that
Maybe they'll make good faith
change.
payments.
Maybe so.
If the with doesn't work out, then they're gone in 6 months. Right?
They-
Any other questions or comments? All
And
those
just
in-
to, I guess to add real quick, there's nobody in there right now. So we had 4 offices back there, and this was available, so
Okay.
it just was nice.
So you mentioned so they're going to have a trailer where they can go down to Dunkirk and do maintenance.
Yep,
Cool.
or wherever. They're working out of, I think, Pennsylvania, which hence the name Penn Border.
Mhm.
I think they're doing work down at other airports down there, and they just, if they have somebody call them, they're kind of going to them. So they're,
I used to keep my airplane down at Dunkirk,
Yeah.
and then when they kind of closed that up, then I had to bring it up to Jamestown to have Nal Bones operation look at
yeah.
it.
And then, obviously, they're still, and from what I understand, they're working on different types of aircraft, so
Mhm.
there shouldn't be any,
Well, they've got a.
there can be
cert-
competition, but there isn't going to be, from what I
It's a great
understand.
idea. And
Yeah.
they have certified
Airport mechanic, yeah.
airport or power plant and airframe mechanics.
AMP, yeah. Just one right now, and there's one
That's okay.
person in the office, so it's kind of a startup, it's a pretty low lease, but it's all new. so,
Good idea.
Yeah.
Any other questions or comments? All those in favor, please say aye.
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 Opposed? Carried. Next proposed resolution is to authorize lease agreement for office suite at the Chautauqua County Jamestown Airport Terminal Building 2, Chase Aviation Company LLC.
Okay, so this one we did put two, and this one's been in place for quite some time now. So the Chase Aviation is the other tenant that is behind the ticket counter, and it does look like we put two in both of those locations. Oh, nope, down at the bottom we do have with, so we'll make sure we edit that too. We haven't had any issues thus far, and they've been there for 3 or 4 years now. But we just wanted to extend this one to a 3-year lease. He just said he'd like to make it even. His son graduates in 3 years, so he wants to be here at least that amount of time. It works out great. He's got a nice office space down there. He does business here. He just brought another aircraft here. He's a broker. So that's another based aircraft. It's a Pilatus PC-12 based at Jamestown now. So hoping maybe in the future that could be another business up there. And so it's a good start, and he's been a good tenant from the get-go. But again, they all know that if air services were to return, we reassess the location and their lease, because it's right behind the ticket counter. This is where the airlines were and TSA in the past, so to find different space for them. And we did increase it, $75. He's utilizing the garage that's adjacent to his office for when he goes on a trip. He parks a vehicle in there, his work vehicle in there.
Questions, comments? Not hearing any. All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Carried. Proposed resolution number 5 is authorized public hearing for lease of restaurant facilities at Chautauqua County Airport, JHW to Basil and Bones Incorporated.
Yep, so you guys have heard this one in the last several months as well. So we've got Basil and Bones in just a 5-month lease up there right now for catering at $400 a month. And they plan to, in April, increase their business. They'd like to open up an Italian restaurant. And we've already, negotiated to increase it to $750 a month, which is what we ended with the last person in there. So just for 1 year, and then, reassess after the year whether they're doing well or not, how it's going, and then hopes that this is a long-term, commitment. But just as a start, we proposed $750 a month at a 1-year rate. So they already have an established business in Frewsburg, and they want to maintain that. This will just be an additional space for them. They've already done a couple catering. They had a few Christmas parties up there during the holidays, and I'm excited about it. So I don't know.
Yeah, we hope that they can do well there. It's been a difficult thing to keep someone permanent in the building up there, or someone with some long-standing time that they've been able to succeed. So we're hopeful that they can,
Yeah.
and that they can
And
utilize the space, and people
do
will
think
utilize
that the
it.
last person had success. They just would not sign a lease. So that was just to clarify.
Understood.
Yeah.
But it wasn't a successful deal at the end.
Right,
I mean,
exactly.
questions, comments?
Oh, I did want to add that all the new restaurant equipment from the ARPA funds, thank you to everyone for that, has been delivered and put into the restaurant, so that's all ready to go. And then the freezer repairs also have taken place, so it's a good space. I know
Tip-top
Bob's looked
shape.
at it. I think he was surprised at how great it was, so. I don't want to put words in your mouth, Bob, but.
No, it's impressive. Yeah.
Good. Questions, comments? All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Carried.
Thank you.
Thank you. Proposed resolution number 6 is the amended 2025 budget for fiscal year 21 cybersecurity grant program.
Good morning. I'm John D'Angelo, Chief Information Officer for the county. We were awarded a $50,000 cyber grant last year from the state. It says FY21. I'm not sure why the state names things that way, because the grant is usable between 24 and 25. So, but anyway, the schedule to use the grant is actually this year. So it spans across 2 budget years, so I need to move the money from 24 into 25. We'll be spending it within the next month. So the grant period goes through August of 25. So that's the reason for the change in the budget. We did not use it in 24. We planned on using it in 25, and we'll do so within the next month. So pretty straightforward. And this covers some of the cyber products that we use daily on an annual licensing basis. So
In general, how have grant funds been available through the state in sense of its actual cost to protect against cybersecurity and that?
well, it's helpful. It's something we have to do anyway. If we didn't get the grants, it would just be local share. Because
Understood.
we absolutely
Yeah.
have to have this stuff. So it helps. We don't get this particular grant every year. We got it about 3 years ago, and then we got denied last 2 years, and then we got it in '24. So I apply for it every year.
Okay.
Sometimes we get it, sometimes we don't. We also work closely with emergency services. They have access to a few more grants that we don't, as strictly IT. So any that come up through emergency services, we get involved in as much as we can also.
No,
So-
thank you. It's just a general question. A lot of
Yeah.
times we'll look at it, just not use your department, a different department, and say,
Right.
you know, be nice if the state would put out some grants or some additional help, so this
Yeah,
isn't
they
a
have
help,
helped
you know.
with virus protection. We utilize something that's called CrowdStrike, but it's something that the state pays for, and has paid for the last 2 years for one more year. And then hopefully they'll continue to pay for it, because it's a great offering from the state. So they do help,
Yeah,
and we take advantage of that as much as we can.
well, that's good. And
Yep.
I'm sure with the cybersecurity isn't depleting.
No,
It's only going to get
unfortunately.
worse.
Yeah.
And so we hope that the trend stays the same, because it's only in their benefit to help too.
Yeah, I would agree. We're certainly going to argue to maintain, especially the antivirus, moving forward with the state, so.
Just a budgeting question.
Sure.
In response to your last answer. So how did we budget it for '25? Did we budget it out of local funds and now we don't need to? In other words, is this going to toss a budget surplus?
No, I budgeted
Budgeted
in
getting
'25
the-
knowing that we had the grant.
Okay.
So in '26, I'll apply and see if we get it. If we get it, we'll adjust the budget. If we don't, you'll see an increase in the budget to cover
Okay.
these expenses.
Any other questions or comments? Not hearing any. All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Carried.
All right, thank you.
Thank you, John. Next, proposed resolution number 7 is closed sheriff's office petty cash fund.
Sure, if it'll come all over here for this.
I have some good comments for this fund, but I won't hold it.
Jim Quattrone, Stock County Sheriff.
Riley Alno, Fiscal Supervisor.
So this resolution is closing out an account that we've had that has not been used for at least 6 years, maybe longer. It was a special police investigation fund that we would use for items such as buy money on drug cases. We now budget that in other areas. So I'm believing, since it hadn't been used for so long, Finance thought it wise to just close the account out. So, and that's what we're doing,
Okay.
or have done.
It's a lot of money to have laying around.
It really wasn't much in the account.
As a joke.
So, okay. I had a big checkbook, though, but,
Yeah, as long as the checks are big.
yeah.
Questions, comments?
My question was, and I think you answered it, what was it used for, and
So, yeah, it was, buy money, some miscellaneous things, sometimes when we would do training for the standardized field sobriety, we would use that to buy some supplies for that. Like I say,
Coffee, things like
Quite-
that.
quite frankly, I won't tell you what, for the standardized field sobriety, it was refreshments for the volunteers that came in. But like I said, it has not been used since I've been in office, so.
Okay. Any other questions or comments?
Good deal.
oh, I did what, so this, it's like $2,500 you said, right? Where will it go then? Will it go to a general fund, or?
Yes, I went back to the general fund.
Okay. That's good for me.
Any other comments? All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Carried. Thank you. The next proposed resolution, number 8, is authorize agreement with various towns for enhanced police protective services for the fiscal year of 2025.
Yes, this resolution is enhanced police protection for the town of Ripley and the town of Charlotte. It's a continuation. Ripley's had enhanced police protection for over 30 years. Charlotte has been several years. It's included in the 2025 budget, so there's no amendment needed.
Are these the same that they were? It seems like the one is a little less.
I believe they are the same.
Yes.
Okay.
When we talked to the supervisors, they wanted to keep them the same. And with Ripley, we did speak with them because there's so many hours that they have, and we are currently lacking part-time deputies. So we've let them know we may not be able to get the number of hours, but we're fine with that, and we'll offer the services when we're able to.
Questions, comments?
I got a question. So, town of Charlotte, they pay an extra $4,000. What does that get them?
It gets them a patrol, like a 6 to 8 hour shift per week, I believe it is. And they just want a car in some of the troubled areas or, high traffic areas where they're having a lot of complaints of speeding vehicles.
So that's an actual presence of a sheriff car officer in Charlotte?
That is correct.
Okay.
And the same thing with Ripley.
Right.
It's just a few more hours a week,
Yeah.
several more hours a week.
Okay. Good, thank you.
Which is good, money well spent for these towns in sense of, for them to employ that officer, to, themselves, they can just simply, get into an agreement like this just for a little extra police protection instead of hiring someone.
Correct.
So it's a good win-win.
I just find it interesting, and I know you guys have it figured out, but when is the event gonna happen? I mean, if we all knew that, we would go and prevent it, but to be there,
So the nice thing is we do now have a crime analyst who looks at our numbers and our stats. Again, it's educated guesses, maybe I'll say. You're
Right.
trying to anticipate and kind of off the track, but we also, part of a state grant, not in front of us today, is the threat assessment management, and that's why we have the crime analyst, and she looks at, but she also looks at our traffic and times of calls and most likely times that we're having issues. And then the people in the community let us know, when and where they're having troubles with traffic.
All right,
Shift
so-
change is from 7 to 7:30 in Charlotte, so you can get away with just about everything.
Oh, dear.
Fred?
Just a little more broadly, because I'm just trying to get a hold of the broader concept of the county police department is responsible for law and order and partially, one of the people responsible for law and order in the county. And as we allocate those resources, municipality to municipality, is this for so how does this exceed what normally the county police people would be doing anyway?
Sure. Well, and that's why we call it enhanced police protection. So what it does is currently we split the county into 4 zones and then the town of Hanover, because Hanover has, again, another contract for enhanced police protection. So it permits to keep a car right in that town. Otherwise, if they did not have the enhanced police protection, we're still going to respond, we're still going to take calls, we're going to still do that work. But when they call, the car may be 2 or 3 townships away. And, we have an agreement with the state police that the closest car is dispatched, so we have state police. But that is the difference, is a dedicated car to that community. So Hanover has a 365, 24-hour day service, so we always have a car up there. With the Ripley and the Charlotte, times that are agreed upon with the towns is when we'll have an extra car. We generally attempt to staff that with part-time patrol deputies, but we have 1 part-time patrol deputy versus the, I think, 18 or 19 that are budgeted. So,
In otherwise, you have random patrol and also on, and patrols on duty doing other duties. They're on duty doing traffic things also, so.
Correct.
They get coverage, but this is just a little extra.
Yeah, I guess where my question goes is, if there were none of this, you would be optimizing your people across the county based on risk.
Correct.
And so let's say Ripley goes, okay, that's fine, but I'd like some incremental coverage. Well, as long as that doesn't subtract from your predetermined coverage somewhere else, it's okay.
Yes, that was the discussion I had with the town supervisor, is because we are short on our part-time staff, the coverage that they are accustomed to with the part-time will probably be lessened, this year until we can get some people hired. If we have by chance an extra patrol zone, which we would call as our float car, we might send them to one of these jurisdictions to cover that, on a day that we would have an extra patrol car. But we're not going to pull a zone car and put them in Ripley where they're not being able to go to the other 5 or 6 townships.
It's just
in that zone.
not impinging negatively on your overall.
Yep.
So I'll give you just a small story from 3 or 4 years ago. We had a new security system at the winery. My ditzy winery manager hit the 2 silent keys by mistake. We had a state trooper, a county, and a village policeman there within 90 seconds. Bang, bang, bang. It was amazing.
I would say that was a slow day in the county.
Yeah, why did it take so long?
I guess they were all going up and down Route 20 at the same time.
They just wanted to pick up the debris left behind.
Couple extra bottles that were dropped.
No, they were all, we said, hey, that was our mistake. Can we give you a couple bottles of wine? No, we can't take a couple bottles of wine. All right, fine.
Who was there first?
The state guy was there by about 10 seconds. No, it was all just amazing.
Yeah, I just have, I guess, a comment or a question. I think, I noticed the town of Carroll is not listed on here, and I think, so towns have to really think about, do we want to have our own police department, or do we want to rely on more enhanced from the sheriff's department, and have to weigh that costs and, go from there. So because it does seem like the towns or villages that have departments either don't have enhanced or have less than.
Correct.
That's kind of a.
And if you go back to the
I think it's
70s, there's, were many more police agencies in the county.
Yeah.
And, they I believe would evaluate the costs, benefit, with insurances and trainings and.
Right.
And quite frankly, it's getting more expensive for places to have law enforcement because of training requirements. I think requirements are for the better, but it still costs more money.
And you got to find deputies.
Correct.
That's the challenge now, too.
We're trying to get that changed.
Yeah, good.
Interesting.
And you have the individuals at the different school locations also, so it's a mixed, you have people out there, but lots of enhancements, which is good. Any other questions, comments? All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Carried. Next proposed resolution is authorize agreement in various towns for court security services for the fiscal year 2025.
This resolution, again, is a renewal of several of our court security contracts. We are missing one on there, but that was intentional. Town of Harmony, we're not contracting with them because they have merged their court. Harmony and North Harmony are together now. So we just have it with I believe there's 8 courts that are listed here. And again, their continuation, we provide a part-time deputy to go to their court dates and calendar calls as the town courts request. And this is in our 2025 budget, so there's not a budget amendment needed.
Questions, comments?
This may not be the right venue for this, but do you see a day when we have like a regionalization of the courts instead of having individual town courts? Maybe, like what you said, Harmony, North Harmony are sharing?
I would say, I believe that's the direction the state would like to go. I think our town justices associations might have a different opinion on that.
Yeah.
You know, I think some out of necessity they're doing it, or they're looking at the volume of calls, and again, a cost benefit analysis, and I think that's why we see, I think Harmony, North Harmony have combined, Mina.
Mina, French Creek, and
Clymer.
Clymer are combined also.
So I think those are the only ones that are combined right now.
Mhm.
So, but it could happen. There's, I would say there's pros and cons for both, and
Yeah,
we'll just keep on sending the people to the courts that they tell us to.
yeah, well,
Yeah.
but it seems like there's a push to do this to save money, but I'm not sure if it's always cost-effective to do it, but Christ, wonder what you thought.
One measure that is helpful is you have a justice that will serve at the capacity of a judge for multiple townships. And that does save in sense of some of the annual training or things that the judge may have to go through. So each town can share the cost of that, spread out a little bit, so they're not all sending the same individual, which has helped some of these towns with some of their costs. Questions, comments? All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Carried. Thank you. Proposed resolution number 9 is authorized agreement with various towns for court security. We did that one. And number 10 is authorized repurposing of capital project funds for Jamestown Community College.
Oh, yeah, we did.
Good morning. I'm Kathleen Dennison. I'm the interim Vice President of Finance and Operations for Jamestown Community College. So as the title of the resolution suggests, I am here today to ask to repurpose a capital project that was approved actually in 2012. And that project was to demolish the Community Services Center that's owned by Jamestown Community College. And the Community Services Center, it goes by a variety of other names. It's also called the Annex, and it's also the former School 7 located on 2nd Street in Jamestown. And it has been owned by the college, honestly, I don't know for how many years, but it has not been utilized, and as you can tell from the original capital project, the college planned to demolish the structure. However, as we tried to move forward with that, the State Office of Historic Preservation takes issue with that approach, and it's unlikely that we would receive approval to demolish the building. So we have started looking at other options. The option we're pursuing at this time is to try and sell the building. We have recently commissioned a couple of appraisals, and we've had a couple of people that have looked at the property in the last few months, but we're now actively moving forward in an effort to sell the building. But along the way, asbestos was found in the building, and we are required to abate that asbestos. Whether the building is demolished, whether we sell it, even if it were demolished, the abatement would still be required. So the college actually, we recently completed the abatement because there was no option to whether or not to do it, had to be done. So why I'm here today is to ask initially the idea was just to change the name of the project to be asbestos abatement, and so that is part of what's being accomplished by this resolution. But also the Finance Department of Chautauqua County determined that instead of using bond funds for this project, that the county has sufficient capital funds available in the reserve for capital. So the resolution also not only switches the name, but switches the funding from bonds to the capital reserve. And one other comment is last night at the PED meeting, I was asked, well, why are you here now if you've already spent the money on the abatement? Aren't you kind of too late? And in a way, yes. And my answer to that was, if you do not approve the repurposing of the project, then the college would have to come up with the money that the county was going to contribute. So I said, we have already completed the abatement. And we have also discussed with New York State the repurposing of this project, and the state is already in full agreement to use the funds originally funded, or the funds usually originally appropriated for demolition from the state. We do have the state approval to use it for the abatement.
So what was the total cost with the state and the county and
Right
JCC's
now,
contribution?
yeah, right now, the abatement, the cost, and we don't have all of the invoices, but it is $226,000. So it's a big ticket, but it is less than, of course, the total budget, this original demolition project, the total budget, including state, county, college funds, is $350,000. So the likelihood is that there would be funds left over from this project, so we will probably be coming back to you to either those funds could be returned to the county, or a more likely scenario is I will be here again to ask to use those funds in another effort at JCC. But yes, the short answer is that this will more than cover the cost of the abatement.
So that was one of my questions, was what the total original expense was for this capital project. But I also want to want to raise the concern or question again. A few years ago, we had a similar situation where the college had changed a project and completed some work, and then came to us and asked for the authorization to change the paperwork. And here we are in the same situation again.
Yes.
I understand, but I had raised the question then, and I'll raise it again. You know, in a sense, how does this process work, and how are those decisions made? You know, it seems like it is a little bit of a unique situation.
Yes.
But it also it's not the first time this situation has arisen, and I was hopeful that a couple of years ago I wouldn't see it again, but we see it again. Now I understand with it, and I can see the sense of, you know, doing what needs to be done here, but also I don't want to see it in another couple of years again. So what's the process, and what can we do to correct that moving forward so it isn't that way? You know, it would have been nice 6 months ago for you to be here and say, look, we're looking to, we have this existing project, just as you just explained, but we really need to abate it, and either way, and so we'd like to repurpose the capital fund. That's the way to go about, versus asking for forgiveness and then hoping that we pay for it.
Yes, absolutely.
So-
You're completely correct.
So where does that decision fall? How did the decision to abate it move forward without the funds, I guess?
I think the root of the problem is that, and JCC is certainly not blameless in this, but the state, the state funding of projects for JCC, it's much broader than the county funding. And so the state, we have from the state, most of the projects are labeled as critical maintenance. And there's a lot of different projects that can take place within that critical maintenance project from the state. The county has asked the college to be more specific in how the funds are spent, which I think is appropriate. We used to have the county projects also used to be called critical maintenance, and then several years ago, this is probably about 5 years ago, the former planning director, Don McCord, said, I'm not happy with this big lump called critical maintenance. And so we split the critical maintenance project into a lot of smaller projects, each with their own name. That was found, where I'm going with this is that from the state perspective, it is pretty open about how we spend that money. And so the college, meeting the state requirements, pretty much can do whatever it wants to do within critical maintenance. We're doing capital improvements to buildings, it qualifies, we do them. So the county kind of, or I'm sorry, the college kind of got into a bad habit of spending the money on whatever it wanted to within that bucket. And kind of didn't go back to the county specifics and monitor what the county specifically asked us to spend in different buckets. So does that answer your question?
No, it certainly does. And the reason I'm asking those questions is as a county resident, I have a tax bill I just received, and JCC's a big portion of it. And so it's only right that we make sure that we monitor how those funds are spent. And
Yes.
this is not the way it should be done.
Yeah.
You know, so
And
that's,
there has been a change in the administration. I'm living proof of that. I am only interim in the position, but I think that the college needs to do a better job of making sure it's spending, it is spending the money in the buckets that are assigned, and if it finds that, we're going to go over in a certain case, we need to be here at the county before we spend the money.
no, and I agreed. And that's, I don't want to, it makes sense what you're doing, just as the procedure wasn't followed correctly, so.
Absolutely. Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah,
Yeah.
I think what makes it interesting too is, from what I can remember, it's the only money that we approve that gets used regularly for different projects. We're used to being specific
Yes,
in the,
yes.
and I'm sure that's the intent of the college to do that. So, yeah, being the only one, I think it kind of highlights it also.
Yeah, but I will say that the county and the college, and even the county under my tenure as budget director, went a little bit too far down the specific path, if you will. Because, as I mentioned, when Don McCord and I started working on this, we split the college capital projects into about 10 different buckets. And we had, I think, 3 or 4 different projects that were IT related. And that was too far, because we had an IT infrastructure, we would have IT security, we have IT, I don't know, something else. And it was very hard and not very realistic to do that fine of a distinction. So we split it into lots of different projects, and then we did come to you and ask to have some of those projects consolidated, back to fewer buckets. But your point is well taken, is that,
I wish the ask, or maybe if the ask could be more general, then we're not even, and I don't know if the ask can be asked for too generally, because.
Well, we could go, we could go all the way back to the beginning, if you will, of, we have our projects with the county are just labeled critical maintenance, same as they are with the state. But I say there were issues with that approach as well, because it was, that was found to be too general.
Right.
And, not enough specifics and not enough input. The county is footing 25% of these costs. The county certainly has the right to know and direct how those funds are spent, rather than just in one large bucket.
Pierre, are you still part of the college? Do you sit on that
No.
commission anymore?
No, we never had a commission. We just were, from this committee, we were providing a lot of oversight to the transactions and the funding with JCC, and we would have regular meetings with the JCC administration about their planned needs, wants, desires, and our level of funding that we would be comfortable providing. So we would have regular meetings with them from this committee.
And what type of place, what type of meeting would you say that was? Outside of this normal meeting date that we're having today, it was
Yes.
something that was, and those don't, to my knowledge, are those still taking place?
I don't believe those have taken place in the last couple of years.
Okay.
Kathleen, you agree with that?
I would, yes.
Yes.
You know, part of my, you know, I want to make sure that, you know, we are doing what we need to so that this problem is corrected. I think that it sounds like we should have a discussion, maybe not today, but something in the near future of exactly how the relationship works in sense of those classifications of the projects and how that flows through the finance department. Were you, Katie, would you want to add to that?
Yeah, I was.
Sure.
My microphone's. Kitty Crow, Director of Finance. I would just wanted to add a couple of things. One on the point you're just talking about, having something too general, depending on how we're funding it and what type of project is. For example, with serial bonds, there's only certain, we can't bond for all things. So, if we are going to be funding a project with serial bonds, it has to be something that is allowed to borrow for. So we have to keep that in mind. If when we get to a discussion about do we want to go to more general or to more specific, in my view, I think it is, why would we do it different than we would do it with a county department project? So I think we want to keep that in mind as well. We wouldn't say to the IT department, here's your general capital budget. We want to know what the project is. So I think there's a balance somewhere in the middle there. But I just also wanted to comment on this specific project. When, you know, we were, Kathleen first reached out to us, it was, we said, no, we think we want to do a resolution for this change because while the end result is the same in that the college is disposing of the building, whether they're demolishing it or selling it, whether we're paying for abatement or demolition, the end result of them no longer, having the property is kind of the structure is the same. So, but it was different enough that we said, no, we think you should come to the planning board, to, the legislature to amend it, just so everyone is aware of the kind of actual change. So I just wanted to give that context, because we did talk about, do we need a resolution or don't we? In the end, we decided it would be appropriate to, make sure we're transparent about the change.
Well, if you'd gone with the initial plan, you'd have been back to us with an extra cost for demolition, because you would have had to spend the abatement anyway.
That is correct, and that's really what started this whole discussion, is that, and I don't know why the college didn't move forward sooner with the demolition, because I've only been at the college for 6 months in my current role. Why did the college not move sooner and find out that it couldn't demolish it? I don't know why.
Things to do.
But in looking more actively now at the prospect of moving forward with demolition, we were now looking at costs in excess of $500,000, not including the abatement. So, Mr. Johnson, yeah, you're exactly correct. If we were able to move forward with demolition, we would be here asking for more money or a realignment of funds that have already been appropriated for the college.
It seems like the timing is the issue in my mind. I'm thinking, when did the state, deem this a historic structure? When was that designation given?
It has not actually been designated that way.
Okay.
As we just became more actively looking to demolish it, we started talking to our architectural partner, Labella Associates, and our architect. That's when he started, and talked to the planning department, was very helpful too, had several conversations with Nate Aldrich and Mark Geis about can we do this? What's the process of historical preservation? And all of the research suggested that we can try to get approval to demolish, but it's just not going to happen. And so it had, but I say we also have not designated, the property has not been designated as a historic property.
Okay, so not yet.
Not yet. And actually, it can't be designated, my understanding of the law is it can't be designated that way unless we, the owners, want it to be. And so we don't want it to be, but even though it's not designated, we have to get permission for the demolition, and that permission is not likely to be granted.
Do you see it, could it be multi-purposes or apartments or?
Yes, yeah. The two people that have looked at it for potential purpose or purchase, one is a Christian academy in the Jamestown area that's looking to use it as a school, which is its original function.
Mm-hmm.
The other party to look at it recently was a developer from the Buffalo area, and they're looking at it for exactly that purpose, possible multi-use or residences.
Mm-hmm.
And if you tour the building, some of it's in okay shape, some of it's in not as okay shape. It certainly has some prospects, if you will.
Yeah, is it over 100 years old?
Right
around there?
Yes, yes.
If we were to sell it,
Mhm.
and if the price was exceeded what we put into it, where do those funds go?
There are a lot of regulations associated with that. We would have to, based on the sales price, we would have to work with New York State, and I know that what monies New York State dedicated to the purchase of it initially, we likely would have to pay some of the proceeds to New York State. I honestly don't know if we have to repay some to the county, I don't know. But it's a long process, so we would be, yeah, we'd be working with New York State to make sure everything is followed accordingly, but there would likely be some repayments at least to the state.
Mr. Chairman, if I could elaborate on the conversation that we had a moment ago. The process for capital funding for JCC is a quite extensive process. So JCC produces its list of projects that they would like the county to participate in funding for. They present that list in detail to the planning board, and the planning board reviews and discusses, and then the planning board makes their recommendation to the legislature. Then the county capital committee reviews the total capital requests for, including JCCs, and makes recommendation to the county executive. The county executive then produces his tentative budget with his selected capital projects. Then the legislature reviews the tentative budget to determine what the final budget is. So it's a pretty extensive process. What we used to do previously, and I'll just interject here, that now that Ms. Dennison is the interim financial director for the JCC, I think this could be a very constructive process. Again, we would meet with JCC administration before they submitted their list of projects to the planning board to start the process. So for example, and this is just a bizarre example, but if they said, oh, we've got this one project where our roofs are leaking and we need to repair them, and we've got this other project where we think it'd be nice to paint the sidewalks pretty colors. What do you think? Of course, we'd give them our opinion, which would help in their planning. And also, once they reviewed their critical needs, we've got all these roofs that are leaking, we've got these heating systems that are failing, we have to do something immediately. and we feel we need more funding from the county than what you have been providing previously, that would then give us an opportunity to understand what their truly critical needs were, and then bring that advice back through the planning process that I just described earlier.
No, and thank you for that description, which, you know, as I understood that, I understood that took place, but my area of concern is the after the fact.
Yes.
In this situation that we are currently in is an after the fact, because it doesn't seem like we have a system in place to monitor or adjust. And that monitoring and adjusting, should it go back to the planning board? Or should it be more of an open conversation, or when should that
It did
cycle?
go to the planning board.
Okay,
Yeah, with this project, as Kitty mentioned, yes, we did go to the planning board in December to talk to them about repurposing the capital project, which obviously that's after the fact, but also got the planning board's approval to sell the property.
okay.
So in that instance, we're following the proper path.
Sure.
Got their approval to sell before we actively move forward with a sale.
And I think that all this is great, and you know, I know we have those processes in place, and we usually follow them, but I will warrant just like Pierre suggested, is that meeting, but also just that open line of communication to, hey, you know, these are a few options that we're liking to do or considering, and you know, it sounds like that some of that is discussed too, but
Well,
Yeah.
and I can commit to you that that will happen in the next couple of months, because right now, kind of my next big project with the college is to get all of our reimbursements finished for 2024, everything that's been spent. And actually, my predecessor is still working part-time for the college, and he's going to prepare those vouchers that come to the county, everything that's been spent. But my next project is to look at our existing capital projects, figure out what balances are left financially, what balances are left as far as what work needs to be done. And I need to figure out where we are in all these projects and see if we do need some reallocations.
in this project's 14, 15 years old.
Yeah.
Yeah, so I get it. There could be some cleaning.
Yeah, and this one, I don't, as I said, I can't understand why it fell through the cracks for so many years. And, you know, honestly, part of the reason that we're late in asking for the reassignment is that been there for so many years, we kind of forgot that it was there.
Yeah.
The others are much more current, but I still think the college has struggled. I saw it when I was the budget director. The college has struggled to spend its capital funds, maybe not quickly, but the college has been relatively slow to spend the funding. And I know that the county expressed some concerns about that, and said, you know, why should we appropriate more money when you haven't used the money that you have? And so I really want to work with President DeMart and, you know, and our current administrators to say, this is the money that we have, this is the status of the projects, are we going to do this or not?
Mm-hmm.
And, you know, if we're going to do it, let's do it. And if we're not going to do it, then we need to reassign the funds.
No, and you know, the legislature as a body in the county, we have to be good stewards of that 25%. It's
Yeah,
a big
absolutely.
portion. You know, if you calculate all the capital projects as a whole, and even now the proposed ones coming forward, it's a good portion of money.
Yeah,
So-
and I will tell you too that the needs at the college are substantial when it comes to capital projects. So there's no shortage of work to be done. I know there certainly was an interruption during the COVID period, you know, hard to get work done, but we're beyond that, so we need to certainly start with getting up to speed with spending the money that we have and then looking at what else is needed.
Mr. Chairman, we're very fortunate to have Ms. Dennison in the position she is, because when she was the budget director for the county had many capital projects of its own that had extended far too long and were not being cleaned up. And she took on the project herself to go through and clean up all those old capital projects and did a fabulous job with it. So she's very experienced in what she's taken on with JCC now.
Question, and it's provoked by this. So where does, it sounds like, if I understood right, the planning board actually was informed that this particular change was happening. So where does the planning board, how does the planning board relate to the legislature? Who do they work for? Where are they in the information flow organization chart?
The planning board, and this goes back a number of years, I feel they play a critical role for the county, for the legislature. And years ago, the county had fallen into a bit of a habit of kind of going around the planning board. And when I was chairman of this committee, I put my foot down and said, absolutely not. The planning board plays a critical role for the county, and we won't consider any actions until they go through the planning board.
Right, so who does the planning board work for?
Who do they work for?
The executive, the legislature, are they independent? How's that work?
Rebecca?
The planning board is a board that kind of oversees 239 referrals, so that's any project that is within 500 feet of a county road or two municipal border lines. We get those through our department, planning and development department, and then sit down with the planning board to review those projects. And they're a board under the planning and development department. We meet monthly, but one of their tasks that they also are given is to review the capital projects each year, like Peter discussed on that process. So our department, as well as the finance departments, have the process of getting the applications sent out to department heads. Actually, those are just open now, and we receive those applications. And then sit down around May and review those with the with the planning board. The departments come and present their projects, and then that board scores those, and then the process that Peter stated.
So who do they report to?
I would say ultimately they're just community representatives. PJ has put some on. We've gotten recommendations for having planning board members to our department, backgrounds in planning, economic development, architecture, landscape, or just citizens that are interested in, your community development. So
It's an advisory board. then?
yes, thank you.
Yeah.
Okay, so its decisions aren't binding?
No.
Correct.
It's just advisory.
Correct.
Okay.
Yeah.
Sorry,
I serve on the city planning
long way around that.
commission, and it seems like there's another kind of layer, because of this, is the city of Jamestown involved in this building? It seems like I'm on the planning commission for the city, and I think we've discussed this building, maybe it was a year ago or so. And we make recommendations to the city council, but it's not binding. I'm not sure the relationship with the mayor. I suppose if the council voted, she could veto that and it would go through that process, but for the most part, we just make recommendations to the
Well, it's just, an
council.
advisory board's an advisory board.
Yeah, they really have no,
Another group's
yeah.
in the line of command.
But to Peter's point is the advisory council, we respect their position, and doesn't mean that we need to agree with it, but it also, if it goes through those proper channels that are put in place, at the end of the day, the legislature does pick and choose projects that are put on forth. And I do recall moving some of those around before. We've taken some off and added some others that we didn't agree with. And as the process of the budget goes through, we've added more to the thing. PJ?
To make that point of clarification, there are some projects that get ranked very high by the planning board that do not rank as high with the legislature. No offense, for example, we talked about the airport study, I think it was the number 1 or 2, 2 years ago. It never made the cut, so
Yeah.
it is, it's an advisory group. Duly note, we, take their recommendations, but again, as you said, which I think is clear that clarity of it is advisory, so it is not, we do make the final determination as to how the legislature, myself, I move those around, and then the legislature itself, chooses to appropriate the funding for the capital project, so.
And-
Just
But
for
to Pierre's point, if we're going to have an advisory board, then we should seek their advice.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So the current process, as Pierre described, is, aside from the annual capital budget process to which the planning board reviews and ranks and recommends, any interim changes to the capital plan by a new project comes up mid-year, the planning board still vets those projects as well on an ongoing basis, not just the once-a-year time during the capital budget process, so.
Okay,
So
but
that-
vetting in that case just simply
They
means
do the
passing on
same
an
type of
opinion about-
review.
Recommendation.
Yeah,
Well, they do
Advisory.
propose a motion, and it has to be accepted, has to be voted on by the board. Yeah, so in this case, they made a motion to modify the existing capital project to go from demolition to abatement, and they approved a second motion to approve or give their recommendation or approval of our plan to sell the facility.
Sure, and that's actually, the question last night, or even today, before this arose, it did go through the planning board, so at the end of the day, those checks and balances are in place. Inevitably, we got the information from the legislature through discussion, which, so the system is working, but I think that it could be, it could be added to, and that's where we want to make sure we just have that open line of communication, so.
I guess,
Bob?
being the simple person that I am, I think there just has to be an understanding, and we all know we don't appropriate these funds to not be spent.
Absolutely.
So I'm excited to have you here in front of us, and we're talking to you directly. So kind of maybe part of the charge to the college is spend the money.
Absolutely.
And if you spend the money in a timely way on the projects that it was designated for, then that money isn't sitting there to be able to be used for, not that,
Yes.
I mean, I don't think the college has ever, I've never seen it in my tenure here, anybody asking for money that wasn't needed, but I would rather they were doing the projects that they asked for the money and get it done, get them wrapped up, spend the money that was given to them to spend. We don't,
Yes,
we're not handing out savings accounts here.
right.
Then, if something does come up, a roof is leaking, it's easier for the planning, everyone to make the decision to allocate funds for that, rather than always shifting. It drives me
Yes.
crazy shifting money around.
Absolutely.
So
Absolutely.
I guess a little bit of a charge would be, here's the money,
Spend it.
do the project,
Get it appropriately categorized and spend it.
spend it, and
Yes.
don't have it sitting there. No, I'm not even going to use terminology that's been used from the floor here, but we just don't want that money sitting there. Yeah.
Correct.
Yeah.
Correct.
It's not doing what it was intended to do.
I completely
go.
agree.
No, and that's a great point, because just as you, demonstrated in this one, is back in 2012, the estimated cost to demolish that building and to do this work was $350,000. If it went over a little, under a little, great. But today, that number is drastically different. And that principle falls in probably a lot of those projects that are on the table. And to Bob's point, clean them up, finish them up, get rid of them. If the place needs a new roof, come to us with that project, not say, hey, we have this, but instead of asking for the money for it directly, we're just gonna say, we wanna use the money that we already have and just steal it from this one. Well, what about that project? I get it. clean them up, close it. If you don't need it, close it, don't hang on to it, because most likely we'll probably agree with you, and, the planning board's been, over the years, good with the college. They have a good rapport, and the projects that need to be brought forward and need to be done, get done. So,
Yeah, and we do have quite a number of projects that are active right now that we are, actively working on. Renovation of the library is one. We just replaced 2 roofs in the Olean campus. And so I would be happy to come back to the committee and give you a list of, I'm going to have to do it because maybe we have to move money. But I would like to come back to the committee, probably would be the March meeting. I don't know if I'd have it ready for February, but I'd be happy to come back in March if you would like me to and say, here's the projects, here's the status.
no, that would be great. And if we could just improve that line of communication with the committee and the body as a unit,
Yeah.
as a whole, and that way it's the public can see that the stewardship is taking place of the funds, which is a requirement by
That
us.
would be
so-
great,
Yeah.
because at least that gets us up to date.
Yep.
It
Yeah.
brings us all the way forward
Yes.
to now.
Yeah, and it's good timing because, as Rebecca mentioned and Jennifer knows, the capital planning process for the next year, it's just, it's just about to start. So, we, the college, we got to get everything organized so we know what we have and then know what we need to ask for.
Good.
All right, this is like fingernails on the blackboard to me as an ex-chief financial officer. Repair and maintenance is an operating budget thing. And the expectation of repair and maintenance is that it keeps the assets of whoever, not just the college, could be other things, up to date. At some point when the repair and maintenance budget or needs gets too big, then a capital project is floated to save those funds and do something, an integer move that makes financial sense. So, if it's repairing roofs, that's repair and maintenance. And we would, just in an accounting sense, whether it's the college or any other thing, that should be in the annual budget.
We do
Well-
review those types of requests, even for the county departments, and we make a distinction between if somebody's requesting something that we feel should be in the operating budget, we move it there. So we
Good.
do a review of that through the process that we've described.
But, so that when I start hearing, this business about roofs, my yellow flags go up.
Well, roofs, as I'm sure Kitty would agree, and she just said, roofs is maybe a bad example of a capital project because the county struggles with it as the college, is that repair or is it capital? And it ends up in capital because it is a significant improvement to a physical structure, and it ends up in capital because it just doesn't fit in the operating budgets. Now, is it a repair and maintenance? You could make a strong argument that it is. But it's, the county doesn't put roof repair in its operating
If
budget.
you're talking about a
mostly-
repair or
or
replacement.
yeah.
There's
Yeah.
different
True.
Yes.
Major
gradations of-
renovation to the
Hopefully you're not
of,
replacing
I
roofs
think
every couple of years. It should be
Repair
every
is maintenance,
25.
replacement is capital.
Yeah.
All right, well, we're wasting your time for that.
We
That sounds
have,
to me like tax
fortunately,
law
yeah,
versus
fortunately, we
accounting.
have a lot of other projects that are not in that kind of gray zone, but.
In a tax sense,
So,
fundamentally, they're responsible for keeping that building going,
Exactly.
ad infinitum, unless they got a better idea.
I'm the one on the capital committee who will say, that's a repair and maintenance. That doesn't belong in the capital budget.
Fair enough.
well, I want to thank you for, discussing this with us today, and then also moving forward, having a plan to come back with us and to just update us on the complete capital funds for the college and the projects that are currently there. So we look forward to that meeting coming up, and It's good. We also have some new members on the committee that learned a lot today, too. So next time you're here, they won't ask all those same questions again.
Maybe.
Maybe. But they're maybe new. Any other questions, comments? All those in favor, please say aye. Aye. Opposed? Carried. Thank you.
Thank you. I'll see you in March.
Proposed resolution number 11, our final proposed resolution today is the amended 2025 budget, countywide resiliency grant, White In Restore New York grant, and sediment and debris management plan for Bemis Creek.
I think I already signed out.
Good morning. Rebecca Worster, Planning Coordinator with the Department of Planning and Development. Today's resolution is a budget amendment for 2025's budget. These three projects were approved in the 2024 budget, but were not accounted for in 2025. The Countywide Resiliency Grant is a planning grant through New York State Department of State's Countywide Resiliency Planning Program for $144,000 with a 10% match. We do have that 10% accounted for in our current budget under contractuals, so we do have that accounted for. And what I like to really recognize in this plan is that it's an extension of a hazard mitigation plan. We've recently updated ours, and this one I think really identifies specific projects related to increases in storm surges such as flooding and snowstorms, issues with erosion, different flooding issues. So in this planning process, we'll be able to identify specific projects such as green infrastructure, stream bank restoration, and projects like that we'll be able to call out, get cost estimates for, and then go after grant funding to implement those projects. So we'll definitely work with Noel and his department on this as well. The next one is the White In Restore New York grants. This is a grant that our department applied for on behalf of the White In, and will run through back to the White In, but it's a reimbursement grant until the project is complete. Obviously, the White In is open, but there's still some administrative pieces that are ongoing with this grant, so we'll be able to reimburse them on this project shortly. We just didn't complete that in 2024, so we'll be moving forward with that in 2025. And then lastly, the debris management plan for Bemis Creek didn't get started last year, but will be started this year. And Dave McCoy is managing that project, received grant funding for $50,000 with that 5% remaining from the 2% occupancy tax reserve, and plans to start that project this year.
Question. The 144,000 or the 160,000, is that spent on consultants?
Yes, yep.
Okay, so it's
Yeah.
outsourcing consulting work.
Yep, we'll do an RFP, send it out to different consulting firms. The state has a list. There's an MWBE requirement of 30% for that grant that we'll have to follow. And we work through procurement of
What's
that consultant.
MWBE?
Minority women-owned businesses are required, so 30% of most state grants are required. So we'll work on that too.
Okay.
Hidden cost of
questions?
state grants.
Any other questions or comments? Not hearing any. All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Carried.
Thank you.
Thank you. So that concludes our proposed resolutions for today. Next item on the agenda today is our discussion. It's kind of a carryover from last month. Last month, we had this on the agenda, but last month, we didn't have a quorum. And Bob and I really discussed this greatly. But I wanted to keep it back on the discussion as an item. So it's review of rules and regulations, charter and obsolete resolutions, and also the particularly to do with the Audit and Control Committee, what our purpose and authority and duties are. And this recently, Kitty shared an email with me.
She had to step out. She has a meeting.
She's
conflict.
gone, but Kitty had shared some information that she had found, some resolutions that she found pertinent or related. The Charter Section 205, Powers and Duties of the Legislature. Also, a Resolution 6211 authorizing the legislature to prioritize list of budgetary services. The first one is our charter, which we've reviewed and we read that. The next one I'll read it is 6211. It says, whereas the Chautauqua County Legislature is a policy-making body, and whereas the Chautauqua County Legislature should craft a more comprehensive budget policy than currently exists, therefore be it resolved that each of the legislature's standing committees shall produce a complete list of services provided, overseen, or funded by departments that report to that committee prior to the release of the county executive's budget each year, and be it further resolved that the said lists will include the current year's budget allocation for each service, and be it further resolved that each standing committee, having produced a complete list of services provided, overseen, or funded by departments that report to that committee, include the current year's budget allocation for each service, shall prioritize the list of services. So it's basically saying that each year we should look at each individual department and have them report, and also what services they do and complete.
Mr. Chairman, I have some perspective on this.
Sure.
When I first joined the legislature 12 years ago, this had recently been enacted, and so I participated in a couple of rounds of legislature meetings where committees attempted to do this. It was a struggle because prioritizing expenditures under the responsibility of a committee, you have to recognize that the vast majority of our expenditures are mandated. So prioritizing a mandated expense is meaningless. And then the few expenses that are not mandated, we got all hung up in trying to prioritize between things such as, is it more important to provide child protective services than it is to provide mental health services? Which is a higher priority? And you could debate that till the cows come home. How do you set a priority on things like that? So it was we made I would say, a failed or futile attempt to prioritize expenses. And after, I'm going to say my first year, possibly my second year of participating in those discussions, they just stopped.
So a question that I would have is, I could agree with you with the prioritizing of those funds. One thing that could be beneficial is just having a list of the services provided.
Yes.
Sometimes a new member or a new member of the legislature could, they learn by asking questions, or, sometimes they might sit in a committee meeting and not know exactly what anybody does or what the department does. And so you have to learn by just being present, asking questions, or taking it upon yourself to further divulge into that department to figure out what they're doing.
Right. In the budget review process, each committee goes through its department's budgets in detail. But your point is well taken, Chairman, that we don't have a list of all those, by department, all those expenses. They show up in the budget, but it might be nice to have them listed separately so that when we're going through the budget, we can, because you kind of can get lost in the budget process, reviewing a budget, without stepping back and saying, well, okay, how does this relate to these other expenditures of this department?
But just for instance, Tom Carley was just appointed. He didn't go through the budgets process.
Right.
He won't until October.
Mhm.
So how does he know? Or say there's a newly elected someone, and they are appointed in January, just as right, so they have to wait until October to see that list, right? So that's where I think maybe the thought of this is to have that above and beyond, or to catch someone up in that
Yeah.
other time. But, and I don't know if it's probably a checks and balances to make sure that the departments are doing what they need, and that it falls in that purview of that department. But also, it's an educational format for the legislature.
Yes.
To be able to know exactly what those departments are doing.
If I may, and I apologize for sounding like the other Fred for a moment, but one of my jobs way back when was to run this kind of process for PepsiCo, Inc., as the staff guy. And I tend to look at the legislature as board of directors in that private sector model. And what the board of directors did not get into, what is this department, that department, the other department doing? It had a staff, analysis, and based on that analysis, and some outside work, it set parameters, limits, and objectives. It then went out to what I would call the executive for execution through their budget process. So, just having gone through it for the first time myself, I found it the legislature very much in a reactive mode. Like, here's a budget with a lot of detail, well beyond, I think, most of our abilities to deal with. Do we like it, don't we like it, and I found us pecking at things, as opposed to, wait a minute, this is what we sent as limits and objectives to the executive, this is what they've come back with. How do we go from there? So that's what I was looking for, and it's actually on page 8, I think, in this thing, is that what was thought about was giving that kind of direction to the executive ex ante. When I think what happened was there wasn't the analytical backup and information presentation at a high enough level to the committees so they could do that. And instead, we got wound up into details, which
I think,
bogged us down.
I remember going through that, and the details are what killed it, if I could say that. I mean,
Yes.
why do we have a department head? Why do we have, if we need to know every pencil that's bought, we can't do that.
Yeah, it's just, it's not
Because
right.
I remember when the challenge was given to the committee chairmans and all that, and it was just like,
Well, I mean,
we're redoing the work of the people that we put in place to do the work with the assumption that they're doing the most responsible job they can do
Exactly. But,
for,
on the other hand, it is appropriate for us to say, the head count of operating this county government has expanded and expanded and expanded. So we would like to see that head count actually shrink.
right?
So directive back to the executive saying, hey, your head count is currently X, we would like to see a 3% productivity in next year's budget. Now, you tell us how you're gonna do it, but we want to see productivity. So at that level, that's a legitimate, because at the end of the day, the question is, what are we comfortable going back to our constituents on and saying, hey, we think this total expenditure is
Like
good,
you
bad,
said,
or
Fred, that's
different.
proactive. We tend to be reactive.
Yeah,
Yeah.
exactly, that's what I wanna
Yeah.
fix.
And Bob is referring to a number of years ago, we attempted to have the committees set goals and objectives for the budget. And as Bob said, we got all tangled up in, well, how do we know what the sheriff should be doing? How do we know what the priority, and I agree with you completely, Fred, is that we as a legislature should be focusing on global objectives. Like, for example, I tell the county executive every year, I don't think we want to exceed the tax cap. We want to stay below the tax cap. That should be an objective.
Now, we're already ready to be tougher than that, but go ahead.
Right, but that's the type of objectives we should be putting out. Yours is a good example. We would like to see a 2% reduction in headcount, in EDUs.
Or increase in productivity.
EDUs, yeah, headcount. Sorry, mixed metaphors here. But, yeah, so I think that that's the type of thing that the legislature could have a very meaningful conversation about developing those type of objectives to provide to the county executive in the preparation of his tentative budget, without, as Bob says, getting into the details of telling the department how to run his department.
But then the other point of that is, if one legislator has this mission, if I may say, do we all have it? And not saying what any of us has said here, you know what I mean? Like, I decided, I think we should cut FTEs by 10%, you know? Well, do we feel that way as a body, or is that just an individual legislator's? You see where I'm going? You know,
Yes,
it's hard to direct the county executive 19 directions.
This shouldn't be individual goals and objectives
Right.
by 19 legislators. This should be goals and objectives established by the
By the
legislature.
body, yeah.
Sure, again,
In the
back to the Pepsi
Back to
thing.
the committees, too.
We knew that individual board members had individual Bs in their ears, but it was incumbent on us as the staff to the board to come with, the data for them to, as a board, to manage those different Bs and come to a consensus.
Yep.
PJ?
But I think there's a couple of things too, if I could just add to it. I think, I don't want to say the complexity of the budget, but to an extent, I think it's important for the legislature, to Fred's point, those things have to be done prior to the presentation I make in September, because
Yes.
if they come in September and they say, this is the change you made, it happened 2 years ago, it's almost too late. The other piece, I think Pierre said it, is a global discussion, because right now, we're faced, and after being at the state of the state, what we're concerned about now is, the big talk has been FTEs. Look at the FTE, you have more people, the county government has grown. County government, since getting rid of the county home for non-mandated positions, has been 9 people. So we got rid of 200 employees that were not mandated, as we own the county home, we sold it. Since then, we brought back 9 individuals. Now, we've increased it based on parallel hearing law, the grants that are coming from the public defender's office, increased mandates from the state that, as of the other day, concerning is, the government has a lot of ambitious goals, bipartisanly, who's gonna pay for them? So that's the concern, is a lot of these increases we've seen, yes, we can say we added a safety officer, we've added a media information. Those types of things that go up, but globally, to Pierre's perspective, it was understanding where those cuts can be made and where it's gonna be more challenging to discuss. But it's more of an understanding, because I think a lot of legislators, depending on how ingrained you are in your committees, don't have a real in-depth understanding of the budget process or where we are with it. So it's,
So, and I think I agree, it's important that the legislature doesn't micromanage or input information or pick apart. I agree with your overview of a broad outlook, okay, and the proper responsibility, if you would, of the legislative body. I do agree with some of it. I don't think that we need to necessarily tell them how to spend the money, where and how. We've hired those individuals with the executive branch and the interaction with those department heads, that's the sort of thing that they do. Now, I think that it is important that we understand what each department is doing, though. So
Knowledge is good.
we need to know that, and that's where that specific information for those committees that you're serving on, you need to know what they're doing so that you can understand the work, and so that you could educatingly put that directive out. If you need to save 3%, I'm doing this because I know what you're doing, and I really think that you could get the job done by implementing some efficiencies or changing the work that you're doing, but I don't care how you do it, but we want you to do it. I understand that overview, so I think that in reading that last bit, I think the information of what those committees, those departments, their responsibilities and what they're doing is important, but less input from those committees saying, this is our goals and procedures. So I think we could reword that a little bit and rework that particular one I just read. But-
Yes.
So this item C, page 8, it sounds like, the vision was kind of what we're talking about. On at least an annual basis prior to the county executive preparation of the tentative budget. So before you get started on anything, we owe you. The county legislature shall adopt by resolution a comprehensive financial management policy and investment policy.
Which we do.
And adopt by objection goals as well specific. All right. Then, but later on it goes, the county legislature shall take into consideration the recommendations of the county's comprehensive plan. Now that, to me, as a private sector guy, mirrors what's our rolling 5-year strategic plan in the private sector works, which was what was, guiding those 2 or 3% productivity increases and what have you. I went back and went poking around for a comprehensive plan, and on the website, the latest one I find is a 2020 comprehensive.
That's the latest one.
Because that then is the overriding strategy we agree on, that our annual directives should be faithful to.
At the time this charter change was put in that you're reading, the county had just adopted its first comprehensive plan ever. So comprehensive plan was a big deal at that point in time.
And I don't know if that's fair in terms of, okay, this is our strategy, which we review each year. From that review of strategy each year, an update, we then come to the executive with targets, productivity targets, what have you. Now, I understand it, we may come back and say we would like to see a 3% headcount reduction. And we send him away with that. He comes back and says, sorry, guys, I've just got this and this and this in the mandate.
Sure.
And so let's really dig into that, because that ain't doable, guys.
Yep.
And then, okay, then we have a good discussion at that level.
Yes.
And deal with it.
Yes.
And last month, we did discuss a little, like, a lot of times the first time we're seeing the budget is when the executive presents it, and then we see the budget, and we know what's in it. And we may have heard a little of what could potentially be in it, but just as you just read, we're supposed to be a part of the factor before that.
I don't see how we do that as a legislature without at least having some preparatory staff work that gives us trends, data, at that higher level. So we're not just shooting in the dark, again, at the higher level.
And I think what the assumption is we're basing it off of the parameters of our current year's budget's
Yes.
trends. And the committee and the legislature as a whole is supposed to receive every month updated financial statements and current trends of where we're actually doing and what we're trending. And so we would have that information, as you would say, because it's provided to us monthly. And so we would be knowing what some of those trends can be and should be making some of those adjustments. And some of the unknowns or new comings, we wouldn't know. And that's where with that interaction, that's what we would hopefully institute out of those meetings, is those unknowns or new ones. So, but the ongoing ones, we certainly wouldn't be in the dark, because if something's trending way high, we know about it, because we get it in a financial statement that's monthly and quarterly, however it's being promoted to us at that time frame. So,
One of the things I've said it intermittently and more going forward, not to be taken negatively, but I think everything you're saying now, what Fred has said, you've all discussed, is that you cannot come in here respectfully 2 days a year, a month, and understand county government. I mean, the legislature, our legislators if they want to know more, we need to be more engaged, whether it's, the department heads through my office. It's so hard to come in here and, you ask a question on the floor of the legislature. Well, again, we have a process to get those questions asked beforehand, and it's not me directing the legislature, but I think what we're all finding out is this has grown in complexity. Back in the day when you had 25 members of the legislature, you had your own your finite groups and things that people were focused on. We've reduced you reduce the number of the legislators, which increases the workload of each legislator. More districts, more area, more committees you're on, et cetera. So in a positive way, the engagement from the legislature, like anything else, if you want to get better, then, you're going to tend to be involved. But to the point, I think what we're seeing is the vision we all want to see is that more activity, and that's, again, it's just, and I talk to the county executives, Monday and Tuesday, that's what a lot of them are saying. This job is getting more and more labor intensive, but to an extent, it's more and more involved. And that's, as the county government grows, and I say it not growing from a want or a desire to grow, but a mandated growth of what we are now going to be charged to do. There are several things that are proposed in the State of the State address. The question we have is, how much of that falls back on the county? And these are, senators and assemblymen saying the same thing. What is going to fall back on the county as a responsibility? That's, again, you look at things like, EMS, the fly car system. 23 counties have a fly car system. We are one of the first. When they get a model of fly car, when they get a model of kind of secondary ambulance, the Department of Health gives us Chautauqua County's model of how to base the system. There are so many things that we're doing proactively that are great, but requirements of county government are just going to start to increase and increase and increase. So those are some of the things to keep in mind. And the legislators, I would ask the legislature to watch the State of the State address. If some may have something, but that impacts. It's going to be your job as we go forward to great ideas. How do we implement? When she said, this is what we're implementing, this is what you're required to do. Okay, well, how do we do that? So it's part of it. But I think it's more just, and I'm not saying people don't work, don't get me wrong, I'm not questioning anybody's level of commitment. But as we go forward, there's a lot of times that you just can't, it's not a 2-day job. You can't come to 1 or 2 committees and then the legislature, or you can't, whatever, just work in the legislative meetings and say, we're going to get everything done. It's taking, and I think the importance of these committee meetings are going to be increased over the next 2 years going.
Well, to your point, because you're absolutely right, but get back to my mouth. Some of the presentations we have here that come forward, and they're interesting, but they seem a little random. Whereas, again, in my private sector model, keeping the board informed at a high level, and that, it would not have done to say, hey guys, we put out financial reports every month, aren't you reading them? We'd have got our hats handed to us. No, it was our job to summarize what those financial reports were saying and show the trends and do the graphs and make the presentation so it was dead nuts clear to the board what, as the chairman of the IBM, the chairman of General Motors, they weren't going to waste time pouring through stuff. To be really clear as to what the environment was, what our competition was doing, what the government trends were. So when they gave the corporation back its targets, they weren't doing it in a vacuum or a less informed vacuum at that level.
And to that point, and I've said this too, it goes back by coming in. But I think it may be discussing, and we could have this discussion in our department heads, is be prepared to give, if needed, a historic background to your presentation. Because they do seem random, but they're random to, respectfully, the legislature, because you're here 1 month and you're here another month, whereas the department heads, this is every day. Just like you said, Fred, there's, the department heads, there's an everyday business, Jen can tell you, Blake can tell you, and then somebody, they make a presentation, this is what we need, from the legislature, and then they may or may not want the backstory, because sometimes that backstory makes the presentation very clear. Sometimes it makes it cloudier, depending on how it is. And I think that's, you know, the piece of the legislature as well, to have that understanding, because, and I think it's a frustration. I somewhat see it in some of our department heads. I know I would have the same. There's a language, and I was like this prior to being the county executive. There's a language that gets spoken. It's like, if you don't know, if you're not here every day, you don't know, not really the language, but there's things that are happening. You don't know the pulse. And that's why I said those 2 days a month or 3, it's challenging to really understand. So more involvement, more engagement to the, you know, and how we improve that in a prudent way to where it doesn't become problematic, as some people can be with committees and with department heads. It's that balance of understanding, you know, hey, because they do, I mean, even with myself, I get a monthly report from our department heads. Where are you? What are your trends? What do you do? Because I meet with them all weekly or bi-weekly, but just, there's a lot of things going on, so it's an understanding. But I think all of us going forward, it's understanding that more, because if it's a $300 million, like you said, it's a $300 million corporation. The board, you know, is entitled to have the information, but in a way that they can understand it. And so with the department heads to get their message as well.
Bob, what did you? Oh, man, I had so much good stuff to say, now I forgot everything. Without discounting, so don't hear what I'm not saying, hear what I am saying. Without discounting our responsibility, I understand our responsibility as legislators, but I don't feel I was elected to oversee or to make decisions on the everyday occurrences that happen in Mayville. Make decisions on what PJ decides, direction we're heading and stuff like that. But it's above my pay grade to sit there and, I'll just use what Fred's talking, you know, we want to see 3% more productivity out of, I understand it, but don't throw me 28 pages on that, because if I read it, I'm not sure I can even respond to it. I have so much faith in our department heads and all the employees, and I've developed this over 15 years. There used to be a real tension between department heads and legislators, and, you know, there was like a battle going on all the time. I think we're doing a better job working together with these people, but these are the people that, you know, Jen does her job. Again, I'll say my assumption is she's doing it to the best of her ability with the best interest of the county. Oh, and just a side note, when I said FTEs, that was just out there. I wasn't being critical specific to that. But it all comes together. I don't know what I'm trying to, I just think if there's too much detail, now as soon as I say that, oh, you don't want the details. I want a summary of the details. I don't need to, do you see what I'm saying here? Our job, and I'm not complaining about this. I'm a part-time employee. I'm a part-time employee. We all are legislators, according to our pay. I'm not complaining about the pay. I'm just saying, if you show me, I can show you who I used to pay $9,000 a year to at the hardware store. It was a high school kid that came in from May to September and stocked shelves for me, you know. So we're the shelf stockers as far as our pay grade goes. Not that if we all got $50,000, we're all going to become accountants and CEOs and all that good stuff. The number of times that I have said to a constituent about an issue, and he goes, well, that's what I elected you for. And I kind of feel that way with department heads. We've put these people in place to do the best of their abilities to provide us with as much information as we need to make constructive decisions for the good of the county. And I don't know, if any of that doesn't make sense, that's okay. The other thing is, as far as a list of committees and stuff, what our responsibilities are, I could go along with that. But if you're not involved as a legislator, you're not gonna go forward, you're not gonna learn anything, you're not gonna, you know, and I'm not accusing anybody, but if you're just coming to meetings, you know, you're just not, you're not gonna get it.
So,
It's up to the legislator to be proactive, to become involved, you know.
And I agree with that. You know, the intent of some of these rules and regulations that we're reviewing are to just be informative, get us the information, or we're making it the opportunity to get that information.
But I don't wanna know everything.
So I think the point
I'm
is,
just
though,
saying.
is we need to know enough at the right time to be able to, you know, there is an area where we need to have that education.
But let's,
right level.
but let's go back
So-
to the budget. This was the first time I've ever been through the budget process that, and correct me if I'm wrong, I don't think we had a question not answered within the time frame of our daily budget hearings.
Right.
And most of them, it wasn't at the end, it was during or right after we asked the question.
We didn't hear that. Oh, I'll get back to you on that.
There was no, I'll get back to you. It was fantastic. The answers were here. The questions were, I've asked more questions than I ever asked, and they were all answered.
And the point too, you know, like Fred had made the comment, I agree with, is that sometimes we happen upon things and the conversation elaborates from a question that is unrelated. So, you know, you ask a question and you say, oh, by the way, this is something that's gonna come out of that, or this is what and we wouldn't have known unless that question was asked. And so the thought is if let's say in January, the committee's coming to us and say, look, this is what we're doing, nothing's really changing, we're pretty much status quo. Or they could come to us and say, look, we're doing everything that we need to be doing, and we have, but also the state now has, in the state address, has warranted that all inmates are gonna need to have a medicated assisted treatment that's $5 million projected to cost. Now, all of a sudden, we have our alarm on, instead of last year or 2 years ago, that came to us as a negative hit, and we took the budget and sent it back to the executive and said, you fix it, because it's unfixable.
But
So-
I'll even defend that. I think
That
we
could
do
have
a
been
pretty good-
mitigated earlier.
I think we do a pretty good job of, unless it's a retroactive mandate, I don't know, I feel good. In
I
the
get it.
budget hearings, when we ask a question, and I've done it myself, you ask a question, and sometimes you think, ooh, I'm unlocking this is gonna be a real effective question. And the answer is, because of what we didn't know of the specifics, it's already taken care of. You know, everything's fine. But the cool thing is, you asked the question, you got the answer, you were here during the process. I mean, the budget process, we can all be here every day, asking questions. All 19 of us. It doesn't just have to be audit and control or the day you're here. And I love the fact that I'm here every day. My wife gets upset now. We do the yearly calendar, and I said, oh, first week of October. Oh, is that budget hearing? And I'm going, yeah, I can't wait. You know, it's good stuff. And what it's done for me is I have learned so much more about what's going on. Just because you're here, this is my 16th year. 16 years doesn't mean anything. It's how involved you get is what it means something.
Could I say, it
No,
takes time.
I'm not
I can't-
done. I got another. No, go ahead.
He's done.
So, you know, I got hired to teach participation in government in 1987. And so I thought, okay, we're gonna focus on local government. What does the county government do? And you start doing some research, and trying to think who was county executive then. Who?
Jack Lindsay.
Jack Lunser, yeah, he was a professor of
Yeah,
mine at
87.
Fredonia, and then, so I started having the county executives, you know, speak to classes, or we did the visit up here, and you'd come in, and I'm learning more and more, and I'm putting together what was maybe a one-page summary to the class. Now, retired, but since then, my PowerPoint is probably 35 slides on what the county government does. If you ask the man on the street, what does the county government do, they're like, I don't know, that's the sheriff or something. They really don't know. And since I've been here, I've learned volumes more on top of what I was teaching. So.
It's easier to list what we don't do than what we do.
Well, it's a lot. But, but then I think, it's kind of comparable to a school board member coming in the building. He or she doesn't know the day-to-day operations of everything that goes on in the school. And I don't know if they need to know everything.
Right.
If you hire good teachers and good administrators, they can come in for that monthly meeting. It's funny, when I go to a school board meeting, it seems awfully different than the day-to-day job of being a teacher. So I don't really know. And then the week of the budget, that was something I wasn't aware that. I think it was talking to my brother-in-law, John Davis. He said, Dad, he takes a day off from school. I'm like, you do? And he's like, yeah. And I'm like, oh, okay. I wasn't aware of that, and I think sometimes we've got a little more.
I wasn't being critical that people aren't here. I'm just saying the doors are open.
Yeah.
I mean, we can, as legislators, we can go to every legislative meeting there is.
Right.
There's a mix,
Well,
as an elected official, you have to first be able to be present for what is required of the job. If there's no way you cannot make everything, then you shouldn't be running for the position to begin with. Because if you can't make those requirements, then
You're not gonna do extra.
you aren't gonna do it, And then the extra, I agree, it's all the individuals, what they put in, and,
I don't do
and
any
learn.
extra.
But also,
I
I
don't
vote
vote at anything extra other than my committees.
But also,
my
if there's
advantage is
something that-
I'm now on three committees, another committee, a commission,
But I think it's the vision of the legislature or past legislators is saying, look, we understand that there is a learning curve there, but is it pertinent enough to have those committees get that information or do some of that work just so you can learn and have that information? So that way your decisions are based on some information or some knowledge. And I get that. And that's a fine line. And so last night I got here and it was 4:20. Public Safety Committee was already recessed and gone. Could they have been utilizing that time to learn what some of those extra departments are doing and what they could have been formulating is for, things coming or going? I'm not depicting that committee. It's just an example. That's the opportunity that a legislator has carved out. Utilize that whole time to do what it needs to do. Is there any new members on that committee? They could have benefited from that, and that's that's the type of thing we're discussing.
So, just a moment, there's kind of role of a board of directors or election, and part of it is in fact what this committee is called audit and control. There is a review, after the fact review control function. At Pepsi, the head of internal audit didn't report to the controller, didn't report to the CEO. He reported to the chairman of the board of directors, or the board of directors itself. And I can tell you a story about how that went wildly south and north. But, so, that's control. But the legislature or board of directors also has a leadership function. And the leadership function is trying to marry what our constituents and our taxpayers' alternatives to doing with their money is versus what the county's doing with their money. And trying to make sure that we can go back to our constituents and say, yes, this is an appropriate level of expenditure and this is why. Or I am lobbying for more, I'm lobbying for less, but this is where we are. So that's what was bothering me about the budget process was, where's our leadership role? Not our control role, but where's our leadership role in that?
But that, and that interaction promotes a positive interaction between those departments and the legislative body, instead of sitting at a committee always picking at them or asking questions, which we're not qualified to do. It promotes a positive interaction, saying we care, we want to learn, and we want to know exactly where everything's coming from, and now we understand. So next month, when you're presenting this, we have a better idea. We've developed some rapport because we've had those just simple conversations and fact-finding. And we're supporting, and we want to be able to, just it's a positive form of management saying, you referred to us as looking at the bigger picture and being able to provide that support and management. It's a positive form of, we're not just here to ask you questions and pick it apart, but we also want to promote, a relationship and a positive one so that we can do things on a more professional level.
I gotta admit, there've been times where I wanted to say, tell me more about what you do. Then I'm looking at the clock and I'm thinking, I don't want to be that guy that asks a question 5 minutes before the meeting's supposed to get over.
But that's what you gotta do, Tom.
Yeah.
We all need to do more.
Yeah, and Tom, when I was first elected as a legislator, I went and met with every department head personally and said, tell me what you do. Tell me what your department does. I want to understand. And one department head said, Pierre, I've been in this job for 13 years. You're the first legislator that's ever come to me and asked that question.
It's the uniqueness of the legislature, because it just depends on how you look at it. So, yes, and I'm afraid you have a vast experience of private sector, but you also have to keep in mind we're not private sector. You have to look at Congress. How does Congress interact? Because you are Congress for Chautauqua County. Or you look at the Assembly, Senate, how do they interact with the governor / because it's all relative. It's the same. There are some nuances, there are some uniquenesses that are different. Case in point, so understanding where we're going. So, for example, what goes on, what's behind the scenes. So this past summer, we couldn't mandate anybody to go on the trip. Some of the legislators took the tour of all of our county buildings. Why was that done? Very strategic purpose. We wanted to show the difference between our North County facilities and South County. That same developer who's expanded in the North County and done great work with us is looking at property and was looking at the time to operate in the South County. I've got a 3-ring binder and he made a presentation to leadership of what they wanted to do. Josh went through and he presented contracts, pros and cons of each building. Is it time? Yeah, it's a lot of time. It was it was an 8-hour day. But at the end of the day, you would have an understanding of where we are. So for some people, the small thing, it's ridiculous. Well, this is 2 years, and understanding where that meeting was, that trip in the summer, then puts that presentation into a different or a better light. Understanding is, okay, well, we saw exactly what was happening before in that presentation and touring it. We walked through it and look at these buildings, look at where we're at, and then we went to Dunkirk. Okay, look at what we've done here. We went from this old, antiquated building to a newer facility. This is why, and then listen to the employees, listen to what was happening. Again, it was just an opportunity. Not everybody took it, and I'm not criticizing anybody, but now, if you would have understood that, if people would have gone, it would have been a small thing. Okay, it's another presentation, much like we had before. So not startling, not surprising, but yet just another way of conveying the message of what we do. And what I do, I'm not going to hold something and drop a bomb and say this. The point of this is transparency, and I think that's, again, another piece. Is it tough? That's why we gave at least that trip going back. We gave it a lot of lead time for people to plan, like Tom said. What would have taken that day been? We would have had an understanding and a background, but not knowing with the legislature, with the audit control committee and budgets. I mean, same thing. I took my 3 personal days were boom, 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 and then I took 2 days without pay when I was on audit control when I first got elected. Again, I think understanding I think Tom Carl was brought in on an orientation, but I don't think any of you, when you were elected, had an orientation of the county. Just as a county employee, but then there isn't a legislative orientation. What are your responsibilities? What are your rules? Committee requirements. And Tom, I think you're 100% correct, and this is a function of life. I don't want to be the person that beleaguers, the meeting's gonna be wrapped up in 20 minutes. We can't, or I would ask, the committee should not come in and say, how fast can we get this done? Because it makes it look like you're rubber stamping, you're not doing your job, you're not taking your time. And if those meetings are blocked an hour, plan an hour. You know, I think that's, and ask the questions you have, because it goes back to, and kudos to what Bob said before, this budgetary process. What you saw, and you said you rely on the employees, that was a 2-year painstaking struggle that Kitty went through. That fiscal reorg, and what you all saw was a result of that reorg and how effective it was. Did it take time? Yes. For me, it was, come on, Kitty, we moved other things faster. But the effectiveness still goes back to, yes, you rely on those employees to do the job, they demonstrate they can do it, which I think is good. But overall, it's that involvement of taking the opportunity, and I think we're all realizing that it's more than, and I guess I could say I was guilty of it as a legislator. There was a lot more, and sitting behind the desk, I look back and there's just so much the legislature doesn't know.
This is one of the reasons that I encourage committee chair people to, if you see a light agenda upcoming, try and schedule a presentation for that committee meeting. So you get through your 3 resolutions. Now have a department head come and give you a presentation on something to continue the educational process. I want to go back to something that PJ mentioned earlier, and that was the governor's State of the State address. This is a very specific example, but she dropped a pearl in there saying she wants the state to declare emergency medical services as an essential service, and she's going to put that in her budget. That has huge implications for the county emergency medical services department, for the county fly cars, for the county ambulances, for the volunteer emergency medical services providers, and by the volunteer fire departments, by the paid fire departments. This has huge implications. And do I begin to understand what those implications are? No. But should we start understanding that? Should we be asking our emergency medical services director to start sharing that perspective with us? Because not only would it help us do a better job as a county legislator, but I attend all my town and village board meetings. It could allow me the opportunity to help educate them and prepare them for what's coming as well.
Or it's an excellent point, or people outside our county employees who are experts in that,
Yes,
you know, letting us know what's coming down the pike if that goes.
right, right.
I think the role of the legislator as well is conveying the message and the knowledge. I'm sure you've all seen it where you hear or see what's in the paper or in the media, and you're like, no, it's not even true. And I think that's another incumbent part of a legislator is to bridge that gap of, this is what I heard, you know. Okay, that's, for example, the gas prices, right? And I talked to him yesterday. I don't know him well enough to say I'm going to the horse's mouth, so I said I'll go to the source. But if I have a question, we reached out to United Refining, and I talked to John Cassimatidis for an hour and a half driving home yesterday. What are you doing? Explain it. He goes, I own the company, and as soon as my people brief me, we're going to sit down and brief you. So that's, we need to, and the legislators need, as Pierre said, meet with the department heads to say, what are you doing? What's this project? What's the lead registry? We have a new program, we're renting space in Jamestown. What is lead registry? Why are we doing this? Why do we have to do this? You know, and it goes back to one of the first investments of ARPA was $700,000 for a lead program. It was created because that lead program was going to bridge a gap between a federal program we already had and nothing. So, again, as Pierre's saying, just reaching out, and I'm not discrediting any legislators, but it's those working pieces, and $700,000 is a lot of money. And at the end of the day, it's like, where are we spending all this money? And I think it makes it, you know, go to the source, go to the horse's mouth and find out. Pick up the phone and say, hey, what's going on here? What's going on? Because it just helps you convey that message, especially to misinformation. Because I think that's what we hear more importantly, what we hear more frequently in the public is misinformation as compared to the right information, or things, people skew it. People like controversy, that sells, we know that, but a lot of times it's hindrance, and, just getting that information. And I've said it to you, you may have, as a legislator, done it. You explain something to somebody like, wow, I never knew that. And they have a different perspective, a whole different understanding by, X, Y, and Z. And I think it just makes your jobs easier, makes everybody's, an understanding of county government more easier.
So just looking at Resolution 6211, I would think that we would consider making some amendments to that or changes to that to put it more of the purview and focus of what our current beliefs are. So I would, I recommend that we would look at that again, just through our discussion today, but, just so that we aren't held to something that we don't believe anymore, or don't feel that is correct, just by experiences that the body had taken, maybe not prioritize of budgetary services. We don't need to prioritize those budgetary services, but, I think we could word it too so that we promote the availability to welcome departments to present to each committee at the opportunity exists of what they're doing and what they're anything new coming down the line. I think we could rework it to what some of the things we discussed today.
Mr. Chairman, I'll volunteer to work on a draft that I'll share with the committee. And so a draft of it'd be a new resolution to modify this one. So I'll work on that draft and share it with the committee.
Perfect. The other things that Kitty had shared was our financial management plan, which just roughly reading it, it's something that we do, and we look at that. I think it says the Audit and Control Committee for formal approval at June every year. We do that. I think, and it's important that we do that. Our purchasing policy, so this one was a little different. It says the county legislature shall annually review these purchasing policies and procedures with input from the county employees involved in procurement, and it's further, the unintentional failure to comply with the provisions of this resolution shall not be grounds to void action taken or give rise to a cause of action against the county or any other officer and employee thereof. So, do we review the purchasing policy?
Yes.
So every
Yes.
year we look at that.
Yes.
And I wanted to, we look at that every year. Is it you look at
sure.
that? And then it comes forward for the whole body to look at in that years.
No, I don't believe so. It's just reviewed with the Administrative Services
It's just
Committee.
administrative services.
It's funny, when you were reading there, then, if this isn't done, then nothing's gonna, it reminds me of motions. It's like, here's what we want you to do, but if you don't do it, it's okay.
So, and I'm not part of public
Here's the
facilities.
charge, but if you don't do what we're charging you to do.
What this means is if the legislature doesn't review the purchasing policy and the next purchase order that gets issued by the county is not void, it's still effective.
You know what I'm saying, I'm kind of going,
No, and I don't serve on public facilities, but I read the agendas, right? And that portion is on there, you review it. And so that's why I asked the question as I did, is this something we do every year? But really, it's your committee.
administrative service.
Yeah.
Yeah.
The investment policy was the other one that she said, and it was, the audit control and the county legislature shall discuss the status of the investment program. We do. Kitty comes every year and discusses that with us, and
And I get the report every 3 months?
Yes,
Yeah.
And you know what I do with that report?
Delete.
I look to see if got parentheses, or it's in
The bottom line.
I don't check to see if CE&E finance gain, where are we at?
Yeah.
No parentheses? Bing. And that's kind of a summary of what we do as legislators too,
Right, look at the big picture.
Did we make money on our investments, or did we lose money? We made money, okay. Can we make some more? yeah, I think we're gonna do the, okay, great. What's next?
And how did we do relative to a benchmark? We may have been positive, but if all the other counties kicked our ass, we didn't do very well. Where's the other county data?
That's why we have Cash Plus, which ranks our performance
There you go.
on a monthly, quarterly basis, I'm not sure. But they have a scale of 1 to 10, and the second year we were in the program, they scored us an 11.
Wow.
To that point,
I mean, I picked that as an example.
you will not find,
Cash Plus.
But how can we be at 12?
well,
They oversee our investments.
that's really important. I met with the media like 2 weeks ago, and I think it's incumbent for Fred's question. Where do we rank? We're the top. I would bet if you, Chautauqua County outranks most counties, if not every county, when it comes to our ability, our investment, and our profitability. I mean, what we're talking about, we're going to discuss a little bit today, is our ARPA interest earnings. We earned over $1 million because we invested that money in the municipal trust, which is something that New York State is promoting, and Kitty was one of the founding members. The county really was one of the founding members. But our county financially is second to none, not because I'm the executive, but based on Joel Rolson, Cash Fest, 3+1, all of these people will tell you. To Pierre's point, they said when they started scoring, 95 would be the highest. We scored a 95. We need to increase it. We got 100. They never, ever anticipated anybody getting 100.
Right.
And Joel's, we did it 3 consecutive years. He said, I don't know what to say anymore, because nobody else is, they're getting closer. But I think they give it to others because we've been so good. So those are, Kitty's very humble, we don't talk, but if you look and reach out to those reports, we are, I'd put us ahead of every county in New York State. There may be some on a technicality, but overall, second to none.
That's how I was in high school. They mark on a curve, and I would blow the curve up because I was so high.
It's a great deal of pride when you but Fred, you make a good point. How are we financially to find out that people nationwide, Kitty's recognized nationally?
So hearing that gives me the confidence in the finance department. You know what I mean? It helps me do my job because I don't have to dive into every stinking detail, knowing that look at our rating. I don't mean that makes you not involved, but
The importance is,
It helps
she
me.
tells us that every year. And we appreciate her coming in and her telling us that every year. And that's the importance, that, the reason I wanted to have this discussion is just to make sure that as a committee, we were doing what we needed to do. And if there was anything we were missing, if there's anything that we don't need to do that it says we're doing, if anything we needed to change, and I think it's developed some good discussion. It has promoted a couple of possible changes. Even in committee today, JCC's gonna come in and tell us about their capital projects. So, as Fred would say, it's our random approach, but the random approach works too, to your point, is we cover the things when we need to. I'd like to see a more, it doesn't necessarily need to be in writing. You don't know how to write that stuff down. I'd like to see JCC come in and give us that report every year, because it's important.
I think when it comes to this stuff, less is more. But
I get it. But also, when you are blindsided by something, you say, well, I wish I would have known that prior. Well, so it's a mix.
No,
You
I
don't need
know.
to know too much, but you need to know enough.
I guess I'm saying, like what you read, what was said could have been said with less
Understood.
of what was said. Wow. You wanna write that down? Pierre wants me to quit talking. I wanna quit talking.
Show?
Anyone else have anything?
I can feel it, Pierre.
that they
You don't
wish
see
to
it.
speak of?
Are you going on to other, or are you?
Yes, I will go on to other, so
Ay, ay,
other.
ay.
So, real quick, 2 things. One, Bob's aware of this, we're working on it. There's been a discussion to assist the North County Water District in a feasibility study involving Fredonia. Funding was supposed to come through Andy and George. The technicalities, that money is available as we once predicted. So what we're looking to do, it'll be a resolution for next month. We just want to give you a heads up. But using 50,000 of the ARPA, it's going to go before the ARPA committee as well. But using 50,000 of the ARPA interest funds to give that money to the North County Water District to complete that study, the feasibility study for expansion of the water district to include Fredonia. So you'll see a resolution next month. We just wanted to give you a heads up. They've been working on this feverishly, and you're going to start to see this more going forward. A lot of collaboration between the village of Fredonia and the city of Dunkirk. There's a lot of things going on behind the scenes. There will be things that possibly will come in front of the legislature, but this is one of those opportunities where Bob can tell you the water issue's been very problematic in Fredonia. They almost had a little hiccup last week again. It was easily averted, but that's something that's going to come.
And this is the water district. This is
Correct, the water
Sheridan,
district.
Concord, Portland, Brockton, Fredonia, Dunkirk, town of Dunkirk. It's not just specific, it's not a small target.
Correct.
It's a big target.
Actually, and BJ, point of correction, for just the 50,000, I believe, if you recall last month, the ARPA project had to, I think 82, we had to, since it wasn't going to be obligated by the year end, that 25,000 would be intended for the also, not to be the business study, so it would be a total of 75.
Right.
Okay, thank you. All right.
Yeah, 50 is in addition to the 25.
Okay, 25. I couldn't remember if it was 20 or 25.
Yeah.
And this has been a great frustration to Bob as well as others in the village of Fredonia and the Water District, because the state, I'm going to say committed $50,000 for this purpose. So the engineer is ready to go. The county, we committed 25,000, and then we got word that from the state that, oh, until you get the contract from the state, you cannot start the process. Otherwise, it's not prospective, it's retrospective, and then you won't get the funding. So we've been holding off till January to get the state funding, and then the state comes through and says, no, you're not going to get the money. So we just wasted several months of being able to proceed with this process of doing this engineering evaluation that's needed to bring the village of Fredonia into the North County Water District.
And depending on the decision going forward with all this, we're talking millions and millions of dollars that can be saved by the district, by the city, by the village.
Yep.
It's huge.
Yep.
And
Very frustrating to be waiting.
it's, yeah.
Again, now, 100,000-foot question. It seems to me lately, and I won't say Biden administration, COVID, there's just been a ton of grant money coming from all over the place.
Oh, yes.
Well, I think the future holds that there's going to be less of that.
Oh, yes, absolutely.
So, how much money did we used to get before COVID? What are the big integer pieces we have gotten, and what of those do we expect to go away? What are we going to do about it?
That's one of the main reasons why we focus the ARPA money on infrastructure, because realizing that if you spend that money for ongoing operations and maintenance expenses, it's not going to be there in the future. These grant funds that we're pursuing are not for operations and maintenance expenses, ongoing expenses. They're for infrastructure projects that will not need to be replaced for another 30, 40, 50 years.
I absolutely agree, but to the Fredonia thing now as an example, what I hear, and correct me if I'm wrong because I'm new on this, is that Fredonia did not do the basic repair and maintenance on their water system.
Correct.
And now we're replacing that repair and maintenance lack with, a one-time whack.
An alternative.
So how do we figure out not to make that mistake again?
How do we encourage the municipalities not to do deferred maintenance that winds up
Premeditated neglect.
becoming a capital requirement, that we won't have the capital funding availability in the future to support?
And make sure we don't do it as a county either.
Yes.
Well, that's-
On that particular point, though, everyone was invited, I was part of it in 2015, was invited to participate in what we're, or at least I'm hoping they're going to participate in the future, and that was called the North County Water District. And if the participation, hindsight's 20/20, I get that, but if the participation would have occurred, we wouldn't have the water problems that we've had. We, you know, I guess the blame's gotta be somewhere. They didn't come to the table and, you know, but how do you?
They
You can
could
lead
have
a horse
solved
to
this
water.
problem 10 years ago, easily. Mhm. And they choose not to.
Fred, when I got into this, when I joined the legislature in 2009. And the first thing the county executive at the time did, he pulled me over, Greg Edwards, and said, I just want to make you aware of the water problems in the village of Fredonia. And I'm going, this is 2009. We set up the water district in 2015, 6 years later. Now we've got people coming to these public hearings that were former mayors admitting that nothing's been done for 40 years, and they served 6 years as the leadership of the community that they're accusing of not doing anything. You know, how do you, I just sit there going, what do we do here? You hate to call it, but you're part of the problem.
No, but that's, as you say, 20/20 hindsight. So how do we make sure that doesn't happen in the future?
Well, we give them this money and let them get the study, and
Do not come to us 5 years from now asking for help because.
well, and you know what I've learned too, is in government here, I guess we're still on the air, but there's a kumbaya feeling about municipalities and governments and everything, you know, and we talk like, oh, we're all good. And then when it rubber meets the road, there's a lot of fiefdoms out there that
Oh, yeah.
Well, people-
don't tell us what to do, you know.
People are quick to point a finger at the county for not helping or assisting in a water issue, right? County's sitting on a
40
big
million
healthy,
slush fund.
a big healthy, general fund. Why don't they help? Why would we contribute to a mismanaged boondoggle that would be a money pit, right? Get it straightened out, get it figured out, get the proper plans in place, invest in it yourself, and if then you have everything working right and you need some extra funds, we're much more apt to help in a situation or an emergent situation or yes, we can contribute to that because, you know, instead of just throwing to a bottomless pit, you know, which
But this 50,000, I'm encouraging everybody to vote for
I
it
get it.
because it's gonna open up, there's so much in place that we're just missing a piece. And once that piece, I believe, once that piece can be put in place, it's just gonna be good for the whole, I mean, it's gonna be good for the city of Dunkirk. They're gonna sell more water. Well, no, they would, if, anyhow, okay.
Related question, ARPA committee.
Yes.
I got an invite to attend or,
Yep.
and I just wondered, is that something, the ARPA advisory group, which I
Yes.
don't believe I'm a part of,
The,
or maybe I am, and I
the majority and minority leaders have been members of that group.
Okay.
Legislator Bankowski, being the minority leader, has requested, because of his job responsibilities conflicting with the meetings, he's asked that you be able to attend in his place.
Thanks, Bob.
And he never told you.
No, I think he did mention something.
that.
He did mention something about, he goes, oh, there is a meeting that I'd like you to go to, I can't because of work, and this was a month ago, and then, now it all makes sense. Okay, when is that?
2:30 next Wednesday in my office.
Okay, 2:30 Wednesday. All right.
You gonna be there? Because I wanna know who to complain to when we, other than.
Now you just got a preview of one of the topics.
Okay.
There is one other topic. we began this, you've heard me talk about this.
So that's the same day as our.
Yes.
Yeah, that's what we do, yeah, we do it right before leadership.
Perfect,
yeah.
okay,
We
okay.
kind of put it in, I have another obligation at 3, we had to bump it up. to 3:30.
Okay.
We've had several instances, we spoke of it a couple of months ago at a legislative meeting, where access to the HRC became problematic with a prominent individual in the community who was here to see the public defender, scared the daylights out of many of our employees. We have increased security over the HRC, and I think it was about a $29,000 or $30,000 cost. This building right here is, even though we have armed security downstairs, is wide open. So we have had instances in the past couple of months that have very safe and secure, but it's something that we feel needs to be expedited. So you'll see another resolution coming through for $127,000 of ARPA interest earnings to fund increased security measures in this building. Scramble pads on the doors. The proposal is a door. When you get off the elevator, you make a left, there'll be a door there, obviously open to the public for ledge meetings, but it'll have a scramble pad, access to legal, my office, civil, the legislative office. It's just tightening things up a little bit. As we go forward, there's just more and more risk and accessibility. We want to try to limit that. Very safe and secure environment, we're not saying it's not, but it's just something that, at this point, from Noel's recommendation, in buildings and grounds, it's not something we want to wait till a capital project, wait for next year's budget. We have the funding, we can get it done now, and it's just enhancing.
We've had enough recent incidences
Yeah.
that we need to act.
So it's another one, I just want to give a quick discussion.
That would go to this hallway?
Right across at the T, will you make a right to go to the bathrooms or the elevator?
Right.
There'd be a glass door there with a scramble
Maybe
pad.
access it with this?
No, there would be a number for us. But I mean,
That
if
we
it,
would-
you guys, yeah, we're gonna work on how you would have accessibility to that. But again, it's realistically,
If it's a pin, 1, 2, 3, 4 works for me.
we'll try. Be surprised how fast you memorize numbers. But again, we're not alarming anybody, just things that we wanted to bring up as a
Is
discussion.
it something new I'm gonna have to reset every 3 months? That
No, not for you. No.
I agree.
Oh, hey, trust me.
That's my biggest headache with
I'm
county
running out of
government.
numbers to reset it to.
I'm on John to extend that to 6 months. I said, I don't even reset my bank password every 3 months for crying out loud. Nobody's trying to hack my email.
I've run out of weeks. There was something in the state of the state, it was I think in the copy, the printed version before what was presented is a mandate of cybersecurity training. All county municipal employees mandated to have cybersecurity. So we do it, so I know that it's part of those trainings everybody thinks is crazy, but there will be a mandate from the government because cyber.
Mandated to do them, so we're going above and beyond. Currently, they're
Yeah.
not mandated.
Yes, yes, that one wasn't mandated because cyber's new, that whole industry is. But anyway, yes, we were going above and beyond now, so we are proactive. That's all
Last time there was a real riot here was back in the early 1800s when the farmers all came in and burned the records.
Yes.
Just on a note of the interaction between the legislature and the county executive's office, is there a way that we have a discussion about the budget prior to us hearing about it in September?
Yeah.
Even as Fred said, is there those challenges that we put forth to the legislative, the executive as they're developing a budget to, make a suggestion? Maybe there's none, maybe there is some, but, right now, what does that look like now? Is that such a thing?
I think you're looking to establish that.
Yeah.
That's correct.
Yeah.
So, and that, because there isn't anything, and it says we should be doing it, so either we change it, we should be doing it, or let's start doing it and establish that. So what does that look like?
Well, I mean, I think you'd have to find out who would be, is it all 19 members sitting down? Would you want to form a committee, or would you refer to the audit control committee as the representative to sit down with the county executive and discuss, you know, goals or, you know, recommendations for the upcoming budget.
Now, I get, some of this isn't, there's other groups and committees that meet just as Tom is gonna go meet with the ARPA committee. It's not all in the dark, and that's one thing that it is, you know, are we physically doing this? Well, maybe not directly, because those leadership meetings, some of this is known and is unofficially discussed, okay? But should, you know, what's the format of officially discussing it, you know, I guess.
I think that's up to us to request that.
Yeah.
Okay.
And I'm open to, trust me.
Okay. No, and we don't want it to be different, we just,
No, I don't think it is.
and like I said, there might be something, there might be nothing, you know, but also, you know, it might be even, hey, these are some new mandates that, you know, that you shouldn't be surprised at seeing in the budget, or how would the legislature recommend us putting in it? We have our thoughts, you know, so it can actually be a collaborative approach.
100%.
So,
So I agree, and
that's what- that's
I
what-
appreciate that.
Yeah.
But to your point, you know, Bob's been here, I think I was here 14 years now between legislator and now county executive. The first time ever I have heard of a legislature going, here, take the budget back and fix this, was 2 years ago.
Yeah.
And it never happened. And as it came out, we sat down with Kitty because, again, understanding is where you gotta go back. No, we don't. But again, not knowing that that was incumbent on the legislature now then to make those recommendations. It's a hiccup. It was a one-time, I think, but unique that those things happen. You know?
They do.
And they could happen even more. That's the unfortunate part going forward. There's just so many changes coming on.
Let's just say they pull the whole Harold Hearing grant funds, right? Now what do? Fire those 45 employees that
Yes.
we have?
Yes.
Yes,
You know what I mean?
that was our agreement when we entered into
The
it.
term of the, yeah, that was, yeah,
So
they know that.
You've
That's-
got that.
And I agree with it, you know, but
Yes,
that's something
yes.
that, at least we would have a little heads up, instead of having everybody in the public defender's office and start attending meetings.
And then you're gonna see that, well, that's just it, you're gonna start to see things change. My belief is with the public defender's office more, possibly, and I don't know, I'm just my own personal thought, probably more involvement from the state, so I'm not sure how much we'll rely on local counties. You know, we may appoint the public defender and staff, but there may be more, much like, you know, salaries and funding and stuff.
Sure.
Certain things being set by the state as compared to, but we just don't know. That's a work in progress. But, you know, listening to discussions that have been had here, you know, the district attorneys, you know, speaks to, you know, they're undermanned when it comes to, you know, the public defender's office. Well, as a legislator, I remember when they had 3 part-time public defenders and Ned was at a .9 FTE. They had 4 people and competing against 16 people downstairs, whatever. So it's uniquely, and Pierre was, Bob would probably remember, we've been here long enough to where the tides were turned, not so many years ago, to where it favored the district attorney's office. Now the times have turned, it's numbers except for right now have been favored the public defender's office. So it's, even in government, there's ebbs and tides, and things come around full circle sometimes. But you're right, very explicit as to what's gonna be cut as soon as that fund dries up.
Anything under other?
Yeah.
Well, I have a question. I have one for PJ. I don't know if it's really.
No, we don't have time.
We don't.
That was a joke.
No,
That was a
I-
joke.
it might be for
Tom, that was a joke.
Last month, we had the presentation on moving the county office to the mall, and, you know, as one of the representatives from Jamestown, I'm concerned about downtown Jamestown and taking those offices out of the city. You know, I think it will hurt the downtown businesses, those employees that go in and get their coffee or lunch or whatever, or, you know, maybe shop downtown before or after work or whatever. That's, I guess my concern is moving it out to Lakewood. It's kind of like 50 years ago when we took those, the mall was built in Lakewood, and, well, you've seen what happens to.
Well, to be honest, that presentation was nothing more than just that. You know, I was met by a legislator, what are decisions? What do we make? We don't have a decision. The mall gave us a handout, basically. That same presentation was given to leadership 2 months ago. And we discussed it and said, well, what do you think we should bring it to the legislature and let them know? There are a lot of things we can talk offline. There's been several violations of our current contract. with the landlord in the city of Jamestown. The South County Office Building has several concerns raised by our insurance, our workers' comp, and I call loss prevention director, and Dennis Brooks, also from the government's perspective. So there's a lot of, it's not just a simple discussion. A lot of concerns. There's a lot of ambiguity as to what's going on. But I can talk to you more offline about it. But all that was is a presentation. There's nothing, there's no numbers, there's nothing to vote on, there's nothing right now other than they talked, and quite honestly, I've got a 3-ring binder of a presentation that was given by another individual who's looking to develop as well. So, yeah, we could talk more about it, but that was a presentation. There isn't anything other than that's what it was. So there's a lot of people upset. At the end of the day, we'll gladly sit down and discuss and show everybody where things are and, you know, what we're looking at right now.
Okay. Thanks.
You got it.
Any other business under other? If not, I'd entertain a motion to adjourn.
Second.
All in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Carried. Thank you, everybody, for attending today's
So, to
meeting.
be honest, I know the mayor is up in arms about this. Yeah. I met with, I kept her in the loop since